Chapter 938. Did you ask me? Chapter 938. Did you ask me? Who is that? How heroic. Could this person be a lover of Fairy Langro and is chasing after her? He's from 100 Refinement sect? Why haven't I seen him before? Most of the cultivators present had never seen Su Zimo before. Even if they had heard of the name Mo Ling, they could not match it to him. While many cultivators were discussing, not many noticed that the cultivators from Sword Sect were glaring at Su Zimo fiercely. Their gazes were sharper than sword chi, as though they wanted to devour him alive. A sword cultivator at the front glared at the long sword beside Su Zimo and gritted his teeth with a menacing expression. The veins on his neck were popping out. That sword cultivator was none other than the third on the phenomenon ranking, Jian Wuzong. If not for someone pulling him from the side, he would have already rushed over. It turned out that the sword that Su Zimo threw out was the startling dermic sword that he snatched from Jian Wuzong in Wind Cloud City. But now, he was giving it to Lang Ro. Su Zimo was not a sword cultivator to begin with. Furthermore, he had obtained the startling dermic sword casually. He truly did not care to give it away. Little Granduncle Master, you're truly one of a kind. Nangong Ling lamented internally. He clutched his forehead while Lu Hanyen turned her head, not daring to meet the gazes of the Sword Sect cultivators. At that moment, they wanted nothing more than to drag Su Zimo back to the sect. The current situation was chaotic enough. By standing up for Lang Ro, Su Zimo had already offended Dao Lord Lan Yu and Yi Tiancheng. Now, he even offended the Sword Sect as well. Nangong Ling was on the brink of tears and prayed in his heart. Little Granduncle Master, please hold back. Forget the fact that you snatched his sword, you're even giving away the snatched Khanate dermic weapon now. The mixture of new and old grudges. Nangong Ling could feel that the crowd from Sword Sect were at the end of their limits and wanted to charge over at any moment. Ru Xian remained silent at the side, feeling a little disappointed. If only little Granduncle Master was as nice to me, Ru Xian chanted internally. Something's not right. Why are the eyes of everyone from Sword Sect red? Why do they look like they've been wronged? That sword looks familiar. Startling dermic sword. Isn't that the startling dermic sword of Jian Wuzong? How did it end up in his hands? Don't you know? The startling dermic sword was snatched away by someone. I heard that it's a nascent soul of 100 Refinement sect called Mo Ling. Ah, it's him. He's the one who made a name for himself in Wind Cloud City and crippled Cheng Peng. Before long, an even louder commotion broke out in the crowd. Perfected Lord Panglan of Heavenly Dipper sect crossed his arms and looked at Su Zimo with a fake smile. He was the number one of the phenomenon ranking 400 years ago. He was older and more mature than most nascent souls present. In his opinion, Mo Ling would die without a burial ground in this situation even before he had to do anything. Many cultivators were making a ruckus and their voices were chaotic. Little Fatty and the others only heard scattered pieces of information about some guy named Mo Ling and a sword cultivator. They were not bothered either. Only Ji Chengtian knew what was going on. However, under the watchful gaze of Dao Lord Lan Yu, he did not dare to use his spirit consciousness to do stealthy acts such as sending a voice transmission. That's enough. Dao Lord Lan Yu took a deep breath and a massive pressure descended on the mystic courtyard before the discussions gradually died down. What's your name? Dao Lord Lan Yu turned around and asked Su Zimo in a deep voice. Standing up, Su Zimo smiled and cupped his fists. I'm Mo Ling, a weapon refinement master. Lang Ro and Little Fatty's hearts skipped a beat when they heard that name. Even Shi Jian was momentarily stunned. Initially, Lang Ro knelt on the ground motionlessly. When she heard that name, she turned around for the first time and looked at Su Zimo curiously, sizing him up. Compared to Little Fatty and the others, as a woman, Lang Ro was more meticulous in her thoughts. She could sense that Su Zimo's words earlier on seemed to be implying something. Under normal circumstances, as a disciple of 100 Refinement sect, there was no need for Mo Ling to mention that he was a weapon refinement master. Was this person trying to remind her of something by saying that he was a weapon refinement master? Could it be? Lang Ro thought of a possibility and her heart thumped wildly. She could barely suppress her emotions. Dao Lord Lan Yu smirked in disdain. Oh. Mo Ling, that's an unfamiliar name. Is it on the phenomenon ranking? Why haven't I heard of it before? Although Dao Lord Lan Yu seemed like she was asking, she was implying that Mo Ling was a nobody. It's fine. Zimo grinned. You'll remember me after today. Long Ro is my proudest disciple and is about to be conferred the title of a great talisman master. Dao Lord Lan Yu sneered. Although you're able to give a Khanate perfected Lord Dermic weapon, you're a nobody. Bluntly put, you're not worthy of Long Ro at all. Ha! Zimo raised his brow slightly and asked, so Yi Tiancheng is worthy? Fu. Dao Lord Lan Yu sneered once more. Who is Yi Tiancheng? How can you compare to the top of the phenomenon ranking and the #1 perfected lord? Frog in the well. What a joke. A cultivator who hasn't even made it onto the phenomenon ranking wants to snatch senior brother Ye's marriage with a mere Khanate perfected Lord Dermic weapon? This is the light of a firefly trying to compete against the bright moon. Many Chaos Essence sect cultivators laughed. Even though Mo Ling had made a name for himself in Wind Cloud City, his reputation was far inferior compared to Yi Tiancheng. Suddenly, Zimo laughed. #1 perfected lord. Zimo asked indifferently, who gave him that title? Ever since Master entered the nascent soul realm, he has fought countless battles and has never been defeated. There's no doubt that he's the #1 perfected lord. A maidservant behind Yi Tiancheng stood out and sneered. Oh! Zimo smiled. So, it's that simple to be conferred the title of #1 perfected lord. What a coincidence. Ever since I entered the nascent soul realm, I've fought countless battles and have never been defeated as well. Does that mean that I'm also a #1 perfected lord? You! The maidservant was speechless. The next moment, Zimo looked at Yi Tiancheng and said something that shocked the entire courtyard. Have you asked me before calling yourself the #1 perfected lord? Pest. The cultivators were moved. That simple statement was filled with a domineering aura that made one shudder. It was absolutely overbearing. They were completely at odds. Nobody expected that someone would dare to challenge Yi Tiancheng head-on even before the second part of the Thousand Crane Tea Party was held. For a moment, all the cultivators even had a brief notion that Yi Tiancheng was inferior to Mo Ling. Perfected Lord Pang Lon smiled with a playful look in his eyes. Don't go over. Hang Qiuyu sent a voice transmission to Jian Wuzong. This Mo Ling is very strong. Even if you have a sword in your hands, you won't be a match for him. Lang Ro's eyes shone brightly. They were way too similar. In her eyes, Mo Ling seemed to have fused with the person in her memories. Lang Ro believed in it. That was the only person who could possess such an unparalleled aura as well. Chapter 939. Killing with a Sword. Chapter 939. Killing with a Sword. Fellow Taoist, where are you from? Lang Ro looked at Zimo, who was not far away, and tried her best to suppress her excitement as she asked softly. North Region. Zimo turned around and smiled at Lang Ro. When she heard that, Lang Ro no longer had any doubts. If his name and title as a weapon refinement master and even his background from the North Region were coincidences, there was one thing that could not be a coincidence. The person before them had stood up for them at their most helpless moment and bore all the pressure for them. This was the sort of boldness possessed only by that person. Little Fatty turned to Ji Chengtian excitedly as well. Ji Chengtian nodded subtly. Shi Jian was the only one who did not fully understand. He scratched his head as though he was conflicted about something. Lang Ro smiled. It was a smile that came from the bottom of her heart. Many cultivators were mesmerized by the smile on Lang Ro's face. Lang Ro had an indifferent personality and was cold as ice. Ever since she appeared, she had never spoken to anyone else, let alone revealed such a smile. If Lang Ro was said to be like a cold mountain that was devoid of human emotions, that smile was like a snow lotus blooming on the ice mountain. It was crystal clear and untainted, stunning everyone. To think that Fairy Lang Ro would smile at him. Heavens, my goddess! Was Fairy Lang Ro moved instantly by a single Khanate perfected Lord Dermic weapon? I don't believe it. Fairy Long Ro must be making use of that person. That person is already on the brink of death and he doesn't even know it. Foo-foo. Yi Tiancheng looked at the smile on Lang Ro's face with hatred and jealousy in his eyes. The killing intent in his heart had almost reached its peak. I'm going to make that woman suffer a fate worse than death. He howled with a maddened rage internally. Sensing the wrath of Yi Tiancheng, the 9 WRMs that were sprawled on the ground rose one after another and the steel reins on their bodies rattled. Roar! The 9 WRMs glared at Su Zimo murderously and let out an earth-shaking roar. Air currents surged and gravel flew. Many cultivators nearby felt the ground quake in a deafening manner and their minds trembled uncontrollably. When the 9 WYRMs were truly enraged, many cultivators realized that the largest WYRM in the middle was a mid-level fiend demon. It was equivalent to a void reversion. A pure-blooded ferocious beast that was a major cultivation realm higher than Yi Tiancheng and was being controlled by it. How terrifying was Yi Tiancheng's true strength? Yi Tiancheng might not even have to do anything. Those 9 beasts alone are enough to sweep through everything. Many cultivators were secretly horrified. Against the threat of the 9 WRMs, Su Zimo's expression did not change and he sat on the chair in a relaxed manner. He even casually picked up the teacup beside him and lowered his head to drink tea. Without any warning, one of the 9 maids beside Yi Tiancheng suddenly moved. It was Yi Qi who had just killed someone in the mystic courtyard earlier on. Yi Qi's gaze was cold. With a flash, she arrived beside Su Zimo at an extremely fast speed with a murderous intent. Her sleeve shook gently. A dagger appeared and slashed towards Su Zimo's neck. The entire process happened in the blink of an eye. Her timing and angle were perfect. Su Zimo was drinking tea and was distracted. Furthermore, it was difficult for him to detect Yi Qi's approach from his angle. This assassination method was not inferior to Hidden Death Sect. The crowd fell into an uproar. Nobody expected that someone would dare to kill another person with 3 Dharma-characteristic Dao Lords and 1,000 Crane sect master present. Dao Lord Lan Yu frowned. Others might not be able to react, but given her cultivation and methods, she could naturally suppress the impending conflict if she wanted to. However, she chose to remain silent. This Mo Ling from 100 Refinement sect who had appeared out of nowhere was truly annoying. Without any reputation, he wanted to become Dao partners with her proudest disciple with a mere Khanate perfected Lord Dermic weapon. What a joke! He was out of his mind. In this era, Chaos Essence Sect's fortune was heaven-defying and 2 paragons appeared out of nowhere, shocking both past and present. If she could get Long Ro to become Dao companions with Yi Tiancheng, Dao Lord Lan Yu believed that this would be a perfect outcome for 1,000 Crane sect. If 1,000 Crane sect could obtain the protection of Chaos Essence Sect, they would be able to extend their longevity by another 10,000 years at least. Right now, chaos had already broken out in Tianhuang mainland. If the 4 unorthodox groups did not have powerful super sects such as the Immortal and Buddhist sects to protect them, they might be destroyed and replaced. The current situation of 100 Refinement sect was the best example. Dao Lord Lan Yu believed that she had made the right choice. Everything she did was for the sect. However, she had never considered Lang Ro's feelings. Lang Ro was her proudest disciple. Everything had to be under her control. She would not allow anything to go wrong. If Yi Qi could cripple Mo Ling cleanly, it would save her a lot of trouble without having to step in personally. Naturally, Mo Ling would be reduced to a joke. Dao Lord Lan Yu was expressionless and pondered for a moment without making any moves. Everything changed instantly within the courtyard. Under countless shocked gazes, Yi Qi had already arrived before Su Zimo. However, Su Zimo was still sitting on the chair with a teacup in his left hand. He was drinking tea with his head lowered, as though he did not notice or react at all. He's finished. Fufu, the tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. This man doesn't know what's good for him. He deserves to die here. Since Dao Lord Lan Yu hasn't made a move, it's clear that she's tacitly agreeing to this. Yi Qi's eyes shone coldly with a ferocious expression. She knew that Mo Ling was a dead man. Many 100 Refinement sect cultivators were shocked and their reactions were a tad slower. Even Dao Being Yu Ding's expression changed and his pupils constricted.
He could only shout, "How dare you!"
Even when the dagger was about to make contact with Zimo's neck, he did not even raise his head.
Instead, he drank his tea and reached out with his right hand, casually pulling out the startling dermic sword beside him.
Buzz! The sword quivered and the startling dermic sword shone with a blinding light in Zimo's hands. In a flash, it collided with the dagger. Cling! Clang! A series of metallic clashing sounds could be heard. Blood flashed.
In her line of sight, Zimo waved his hand and slashed. Ripples appeared on the sword and the dagger in her hands was instantly minced into pieces and shot back.
Poof! 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 The distance between the two of them was too close. The fragments of the dagger melted into Yi Qi's face and her essence spirit was destroyed on the spot. Yi Qi charged forward swiftly, but her retreat was even swifter. Thump! By the time Yi Qi landed heavily on the ground and rolled to Yi Tianqing's feet, she was already a mangled corpse with a disfigured face. At that moment, Zimo finally finished his tea and raised his head, putting down his teacup slowly. Dao Bing Yu Ding's "How dare you" had just sounded completely. While drinking tea, Zimo killed someone with his sword. Everything happened fast but ended even faster. In the blink of an eye, the dust had settled. Yi Qi was dead. Chapter 940. Weapon Refinement Competition. Chapter 940. Weapon Refinement Competition. Not many people saw how Zimo attacked. However, in the blink of an eye, Yi Qi was defeated. It was a startling sword strike. What a ruthless man. He killed such a beautiful woman without hesitation. It's normal for sword cultivators to be decisive in killing. However, when did such a powerful sword cultivator appear in 100 Refinement sect? Many cultivators discussed softly. Good sword. Perfected Lord Panglong laughed. Jian Wuzong's eyes were bloodshot as he grit his teeth. If not for my startling dermic sword, he wouldn't have been able to kill his opponent with a single slash. Jian Wuzong was not the only one who thought that way.
Most of the cultivators present thought that the reason why the attack possessed such shocking might was because of the startling dermic sword that was a connate perfected Lord dermic weapon.
Sword Sex Hang Qiuyu narrowed his gaze and frowned in deep thought. He could tell. Even without the startling dermic sword, Yi Qi would not have been able to escape death either. Although the power of that attack was immense, there was something strange about that sword technique. It did not seem like a sword technique and gave him a sense of déjà vu. However, Mo Ling's attack was way too fast and the sword flash was fleeting. There was no chance for him to take a closer look. With the death of Yi Tianqing's maidservant, everyone realized that something major was about to happen. You have a death wish. Yi Tianqing stood up slowly, exuding a berserk aura that caused the entire mystic courtyard to tremble. Woo! Before Yi Tianqing did anything, Yi Yi had already started playing her flute. The sound of the flute was bitter and pervasive, as though it could bore into everyone's consciousness and harm their essence spirits. Kill! Yi Er and Yi San, two maidservants, seemed unaffected by the sound of the flute. Instead, their auras surged and they charged towards Zimo. Yi Si waved her sleeves and a shower of pink petals fell. Although the petals looked weak, they seemed to slice the void into pieces when they drifted over. Yi Wu held a feather fan and injected dermic powers. 5 dermic patterns shone on the fan. It was a perfect grade perfected Lord dermic weapon. Even the maidservants of Yi Tianqing used perfect dermic weapons. What are you guys doing? Trying to bully with numbers. On 100 Refinement sect side, Dao Bing Yu Ding and Nangong Ling led the group of cultivators. They stood up one after another, took out their dermic weapons and conjured hand seals. The Chaos Essence sect cultivators stood out as well. The battle was about to begin. At this point, the situation was almost out of control. Frowning, Dao Lord Lan Yu had no choice but to step forward and stabilize the situation. If the situation were to develop and both parties were to fight, all the cultivators in the courtyard would be embroiled and no one would be spared. There would be no need for the Thousand Crane Tea Party to continue either. Thousand Crane sect and Dao Lord Lan Yu would end up as jokes. That's enough. Dao Lord Lan Yu roared and released a tremendous pressure that enveloped down. Not only did her voice contain the power of a Dharma characteristic Tao Lord, it also contained a crane cry that instantly destroyed Yi Yi's flute. Yi Si's peach blossoms became motionless in midair.
Be it the primordial chaos sect or 100 refinement sect, the dermic arts of the cultivators were dispersed instantly, be it whether they were formed or in the midst of formation.
The strength of a Dharma characteristic sect master was evident.
This is Thousand Crane Sect.
Tao Lord Lan Yu said slowly. It's the Thousand Crane Tea Party now. What are you guys trying to do? Do you have any regards for me as a sect master? Yi Yi pointed at Su Zimo and said coldly. This person disregarded Thousand Crane Sect's rules and killed someone. He deserves to die. Bullshit. Little Fatty could not hold it in any longer and scolded. Young lass, you look fair and clean, but your heart is way too dirty. Are you guys being reasonable? Ru Xian sneered. That woman was the one who attacked first. Why can't we retaliate?
Humph. She deserved her death.
Let's put this matter aside for now.
Tao Lord Lan Yu had a stern expression as she said in a deep voice. Settle the feud between you two at the Paragon fight.
I won't step in at that time. The situation was finally stabilized with the intervention of Thousand Crane Sect's master. The Chaos Essence sect and 100 Refinement sect cultivators retreated. Suddenly, Yi Tiancheng burst into laughter. He looked at the group of 100 Refinement sect cultivators and nodded slowly.
Good, very good.
100 Refinement sect sure has guts to dare to challenge Chaos Essence sect now.
Foo-foo, ha ha ha.
Don't worry, brother Yi. Ming Han shouted. After the weapon refinement competition, 100 Refinement sect will be removed from the 4 unorthodox groups. All right. Yi Tiancheng glared at Su Zimo and said coldly, let's see how long more 100 Refinement sect can protect you. Su Zimo smiled calmly. Yi Tiancheng had made a mistake. The reason why Su Zimo dared to confront Yi Tiancheng was not because of 100 Refinement sect but because of himself. Tao Lord Lan Yu looked at Lang Ro. Go take part in the talisman battle first.
As for your marriage.
Pausing for a moment, Tao Lord Lan Yu glanced at Su Zimo and sneered. Since someone overestimates himself and wants to challenge Yi Tiancheng, we'll give him a chance when the paragons fight. If Yi Tiancheng wins, Rower, you'll have to follow my arrangements. How about that? All right. Lang Ro agreed without hesitation. Even Tao Lord Lan Yu was stunned. Lang Ro's reply gave her a feeling that her disciple felt that there was no way Yi Tiancheng would win at all. How was that possible? Perfected Lord Lan Yu smiled and shook her head slightly. In her eyes, the only thing Mo Ling could win against Yi Tiancheng was his cultivation realm. However, for a monster incarnate like Yi Tiancheng, the difference between early and late-stage nascent souls was nothing much. Yi Tiancheng had even killed a void reversion before. Could it be that Mo Ling wanted to rely on the startling dermic sword? That was even more ridiculous. Tao Lord Lan Yu believed that Yi Tiancheng had connate perfected Lord dermic weapons as well. Furthermore, he definitely had more than one. Lang Ro's ready acceptance allowed the Thousand Crane Tea Party to continue on track. For some reason, Tao Lord Lan Yu felt that Lang Ro seemed to have changed into another person just now. Although Lang Ro still had an indifferent expression, there was a hint of joy in her eyes. Tao Lord Lan Yu shook her head and stopped thinking about it. No matter what, the situation was still within her control. The interlude earlier was merely a hiccup. The tea party continued. As a cultivator sent out by Thousand Crane Sect, Lang Ro was ready to accept challenges from the various talisman masters of the Middle Continent. The talisman battle progressed even faster. The outcome was decided within an hour. Before the other talisman masters could refine their own talismans, Lang Ro had already refined a 9 Heavens Thunder talisman. The power of that talisman could challenge a peak nascent soul. In fact, even void reversions would have to be wary of it. When the other talisman masters saw that, they gave up and admitted defeat. Naturally, Lang Ro was conferred the title of Great Talisman Master and drank the supreme grade mystic tea. The weapon refinement battle came after the talisman battle. It was also the most important event of the Thousand Crane Tea Party. Chapter 941. Undefeatable Positions. Chapter 941. Undefeatable Position. With a confident expression,
Ming Han stood in the middle of the mystic courtyard a long time ago and summoned his weapon tripod. With a bang, it landed on the ground. Many cultivators looked over with shocked expressions. The weapon tripod was as tall as a man and its body was tough, shimmering with a dark golden metallic luster. 4 balls of hellfire were carved around the walls of the tripod, as though they would ignite at any moment. Most importantly, there were 6 dermic patterns on the tripod. It was a connate perfected Lord dermic weapon. This is the Netherworld tripod, my destiny dermic weapon. Ming Han said proudly, back then, I managed to refine a connate perfected Lord dermic weapon with the help of this tripod. Ah! Ming Han is so powerful. If he can refine another connate perfected Lord dermic weapon, won't 100 Refinement sect definitely lose? The Hall Master of Hellfire Hall is currently the top weapon refinement grandmaster of Tianhuang mainland. Now that they have a successor like this kid, Hellfire Hall's rise is almost unstoppable. A wave of shock and astonishment could be heard from the crowd. This was the first time many cultivators present had heard of Ming Han and this matter. Sensing the gazes from his surroundings, Ming Han was delighted and turned to look at Lu Hanyan of 100 Refinement sect with a provocative gaze. Lu Hanyan pursed her lips tightly, looking nervous as the pressure on her increased. He's putting pressure on you. Don't fall for it. Zimo reminded her softly. It's not that easy to refine a connate dermic weapon. There's only a chance of success if the timing, location, luck, environment and many other factors are combined. Although Zimo had not refined dermic weapons before, he possessed the foundation of weapon refinement and had knowledge imparted to him by Dao Lord Extreme Fire. He understood the theory behind the craft. Dao being Yuding added, Junior Sister Lu, relax and try your best. Senior Sister Lu, you can definitely do it. Senior Sister Lu, defeat him. Many cultivators of 100 Refinement sect cheered for Lu Hanyan as well. Lu Hanyan took a deep breath and nodded vigorously. Right then, Lang Ro, who had just been conferred the title of Great Talisman Master, walked over slowly and nodded at Lu Hanyan. Fellow Taoist Lu, I wish you success. Although both of them were at nascent soul realm, Fairy Lang Ro was much more famous than her. Furthermore, they did not know each other. Now that she received Lang Ro's encouragement, Lu Hanyan felt flattered and relaxed. She returned the greeting with a smile. Thank you, Fairy Lang Ro. Lang Ro nodded with her usual aloof expression. When everyone from 100 Refinement sect saw Fairy Lang Ro approaching, they could not help but feel nervous and uneasy. 100 Refinement sect cultivators spent their days refining dermic weapons and were mostly rough men. Many cultivators blushed and did not even dare to look at her. Lang Ro glanced sideways at the green-robed man beside her and smiled. Fellow Taoist Mo Ling, thank you for your help earlier on. If it's convenient, please come over for a chat. Look, Fairy Lang Ro is smiling at Mo Ling again. Fairy Lang Ro seems to be inviting that person. Aya, imagine the two of them standing together. What an ugly sight. It's akin to planting a flower on cow dung. Many cultivators lamented internally. The disciples of 100 Refinement sect were dumbfounded and their jaws almost dropped. All right. Rising, Zimo left with Lang Ro. Under the envious gazes of countless cultivators, Lang Ro led Zimo, Little Fatty, Ji Qingtian and Shi Jian through the crowd and arrived at the mystic tea tree. Dao Lord Lan Yu frowned when she saw that. She truly did not wish to see Lang Ro involved in any manner with Mo Ling from 100 Refinement sect. 100 Refinement sect was already in a precarious situation and might not even be able to get through this. As for Mo Ling, he would definitely die since he challenged Yi Tiancheng. Sect Master, let her be. An elder of Thousand Cranes sect whispered. The Paragon battle is going to begin soon in any case. That Mo Ling won't be able to avoid it. Yes. Dao Lord Lan Yu nodded and ignored Zimo and the others. Spirit consciousness detection is blocked beneath this mystic tea tree. Even if we send voice transmissions using our spirit consciousnesses, there's no way of being exposed. Lang Ro's voice sounded in the minds of Zimo and the others. Bro, is that really you? Little Fatty could not help himself any longer and was the first to ask. If not for the fact that there were too many cultivators around, he would have pounced over and given Zimo a bear hug. Zimo nodded with a smile and said emotionally, "I'm back." Xueqi was not someone of many words and merely smiled foolishly at the side. He was extremely delighted as well to be reunited with an old friend. "I heard about everything that happened to you guys," Zimo said. "Initially, I thought that Dean would attend this tea party. However, it's a pity that he didn't come. He's lucky to escape this." Pausing for a moment, Zimo looked at little Fatty. "Don't worry. After this tea party is over, I'll kill Dean personally and take revenge for you guys." "Bro, don't be rash," little Fatty replied hurriedly. "Dean has already cultivated to the void reversion realm. It won't be too late for you to look for him after you catch up to him. We didn't suffer much either. Furthermore, Yi Tiancheng is extremely strong and not inferior to the old Dean. Bro, don't underestimate him." Little Fatty was worried and reminded again. "Yes." Zimo nodded. "Zimo, where have you been all these years? Why haven't I heard from you?" Lang Ro looked at Zimo curiously and asked with concern. Zimo recalled the days in Thousand Demon Valley where he reigned supreme with Monkey and the others and could not help but smile. "After leaving the ancient battlefield, I went to Thousand Demon Valley." Zimo recounted his experience in Thousand Demon Valley. They naturally had a lot to say after reuniting after such a long time. Unknowingly, time passed. The fight for weapon refinement in the middle of the courtyard had already reached its climax. Including Ming Han, there were hundreds of weapon refinement masters from all over the Middle Continent that challenged Lu Hanyan. At that moment, other than Ming Han and Lu Hanyan, the other weapon refinement masters had already withdrawn from the fight. That was because Ming Han and Lu Hanyan's weapon refinement speed far surpassed everyone else's and they were already at the final step of forming their dermic patterns. Both parties refined flying swords. Furthermore, Ming Han was one step ahead of Lu Hanyan. Condensing dermic patterns was similar to condensing spirit patterns. It was the most difficult step and the slightest mistake would cause all their efforts to go to waste. At that moment, Ming Han's weapon tripod shone with a fifth beam of light under countless gazes. This meant that Ming Han had already formed 5 dermic patterns. This is way too scary. If Ming Han stops now, he would have already successfully refined a perfect grade perfected Lord dermic weapon. Many cultivators discussed softly. However, Ming Han showed no signs of stopping. He was blessed with luck and was a rare weapon refinement genius throughout history. He wanted to defy the heavens and condense his 6th dermic pattern to refine a connate dermic weapon in front of everyone. Once the connate dermic weapon was successfully refined, he would be in an undefeatable position. Everything that happened today would be recorded in the history of weapon refinement forever. Chapter 942. Public Enemy. Chapter 942. Public Enemy. The entire mystic courtyard fell into silence. Almost all the cultivators were watching the 2 people in the middle of the crowd, who were in the midst of a weapon refinement competition intently. This was the most critical juncture for the both of them. Ming Han was attempting to condense his 6th dermic pattern. Lu Hanyan was condensing her 5th dermic pattern. No one gave up. Nobody knew the outcome of this weapon refinement battle until the final moment. After all, the success rate of condensing 6 dermic patterns to create connate dermic weapons was extremely low. If Ming Han failed, Lu Hanyan would naturally win. However, Ming Han still had the upper hand in the current situation. He was the first to form 5 dermic patterns and the pressure Lu Hanyan was under would definitely increase. Many disciples of 100 Refinement sect were nervous as they clenched their fists and prayed for Lu Hanyan. Lu Hanyan's face was already slightly pale. Weapon refinement was extremely mentally draining. Furthermore, she was under such immense pressure. Ming Han closed his eyes and sensed the flying sword within the weapon tripod with his spirit consciousness. It rose and fell within a ball of hellfire, and the blade of the sword was burned red with 5 distinct patterns. Ming Han's expression was no longer as relaxed as before, looking slightly grim. He did not have the confidence to condense 6 dermic patterns either. He could only rely on that bit of experience from the past. His keen senses towards weapon refinement that were obtained after many years of effort towards the craft as well as his immense fortune to grasp that fleeting opportunity. Whoosh! Right then, Lu Hanyan's weapon tripod shone with a bedazzling light. The crowd of cultivators turned and gasped. A fifth dermic pattern. Lu Hanyan had also condensed a fifth dermic pattern. If she stopped now, a perfect-grade perfected Lord dermic weapon would be forged successfully. 4 weapon refinement masters, being able to create perfect dermic weapons was already their limit. Normally, Lu Hanyan would be able to win against weapon refinement masters from all over the Middle Continent with this perfect-grade perfected Lord dermic weapon. However, she could not defeat Ming Han. Ming Han's weapon refinement speed was even faster than hers. Furthermore, Ming Han was currently cultivating his 6th dermic pattern. Lu Hanyan took a deep breath and tried her best to control the flames to calm her mind. She was in no hurry to condense the 6th dermic pattern. She was waiting. If Ming Han were to fail, she would be able to win this weapon refinement battle with that perfect-grade perfected Lord dermic weapon. Ming Han's eyes were still closed, as though he was immersed in his own world. Lu Hanyan's actions did not affect him at all. Everyone held their breaths and did not dare to blink. The fight for weapon refinement was at its most critical moment and victory could be decided at any moment. An unknown period of time passed. Ming Han suddenly opened his eyes and hollered, "Condense!" Instantly, the heaven and earth powers in the void seemed to be boiling. An endless stream of heaven and earth powers surged into the netherworld tripod and almost materialized into a gigantic vortex. Dermic powers spewed from the netherworld tripod and a bright light burst forth. A 6th dermic pattern appeared on the sword. The Khanate perfected Lord dermic weapon was successfully done. The cultivators were moved. Everyone widened their eyes and looked on in disbelief. It was too shocking. A scarlet flying sword appeared from the netherworld tripod slowly. There were 6 distinct patterns on the sword that shone with a blinding light. Most cultivators would not be able to witness such a sight even once in their entire lives. Nobody wanted to miss it. All right. Even Thousand Crane sect master, Dao Lord Lan Yu, could not help but praise. While everyone from 100 Refinement sect was shocked, their expressions darkened. Lu Hanyan was shocked and failed to control her flames. The flying sword in her tripod nearly exploded to waste all her prior efforts. She took a deep breath and hurriedly stabilized the flames. The birth of the Khanate perfected Lord dermic weapon meant that she had no way out. She could only take the challenge head-on and continue cultivating her 6th dermic pattern. The tides had turned entirely. Instantly, it was as though all the pressure was mounted on the body of this frail woman. In fact, she felt as though she could barely breathe. Ming Han stood proudly as he received the admiring gazes from the crowd and the praises of countless people. He looked down at Lu Hanyan from the corner of his eyes. His gaze was filled with indescribable disdain. Lu Hanyan did not dare to make eye contact with Ming Han. She could only try her best to compose herself and attempt to condense her 6th dermic pattern. Time slowly passed. Lu Hanyan's face turned paler and beads of sweat formed on her forehead. She did not dare to attempt condensation. If she failed in her attempt, she would fall into an endless abyss. However, if she did not attempt to condense it, her chances would decrease until she exhausted her mental strength. The external pressure and mental fatigue made Lu Hanyan feel like she was about to break down. Ming Han smirked when he saw that. He knew that he would definitely win. Zimo and the others were also watching the situation under the mystic tea tree. That beautiful sister is probably going to lose, little fatty sighed. Lang Ro turned to look at Zimo and said, "If she loses, it will greatly affect the reputation of 100 Refinement sect. I'm afraid." The first segment of the 1000 Crane Tea Party was to select great masters of the 4 unorthodox groups. The titles of Great Formation Master, Great Elixir Refinement Master and Great Talisman Master were all obtained by cultivators of Ancient Array Sect, Elixir Yang Sect and 1000 Crane Sect. However, if the 100 Refinement Sect cultivators did not manage to get their hands on the title of Great Weapon Refinement Master, Hellfire Hall would definitely make use of the opportunity to strike. Zimo frowned deeply in deep thought. If he resorted to force before the Paragon battle segment, there was a high chance that he would be ousted from this place by Dao Lord Lan Yu. However, he would not be of much help if he did not resort to force. Rubbing his forehead gently, Zimo pondered for a moment and his eyes flickered. Condense. Right then, Lu Hanyan finally made a move to condense her sixth dermic pattern. However, the moment she said that, a faint cracking sound came from the weapon tripod. Although it was a soft sound, it was like thunder in Lu Hanyan's ears. Ming Han's smile deepened. He had already won. It was the sound of the sword's blade cracking from a failed dermic pattern condensation attempt. Right after, a loud bang sounded from the weapon tripod as the sword exploded into countless shards that struck the walls of the tripod. Lu Hanyan's mind was affected and her body swayed as she fell from midair. Her face was pale as she spat out a mouthful of blood. Hanyan! Nangong Ling hurried forward and supported Lu Hanyan with a heartbroken expression. I've lost. Lu Hanyan murmured softly with a miserable expression, her eyes filled with pain. Ming Han's eyes were cold as he shouted, if your 100 Refinement sect can't even defend the title of a great weapon refinement master, what rights do you have to be one of the 4 unorthodox groups? That's right. Perfected Lord Panglon of Heavenly Dipper sect stood up and declared, 100 Refinement sect's decline is now a cold fact. In my opinion, you guys should have been eliminated from the 4 unorthodox groups a long time ago. Jian Wuzong added coldly, I agree. The reason why he stood out was purely due to his anger towards Zimo, who was from 100 Refinement sect. Yi Tiancheng said indifferently, how dare you guys from 100 Refinement sect stay here? Get lost, you disgraceful scum. His intentions were simple. Once he chased everyone from 100 Refinement sect out of 1000 Crane sect, he could send the 9 WRs by his feet to kill everyone from 100 Refinement sect. Of the 6 major immortal sects that were participating in the Tea Party, 3 of them expressed their stand on the side of Hellfire Palace. The other 3 immortal sects remained silent and watched coldly by the sidelines. It was clear they had no intention of helping. The 100 Refinement sect cultivators were at a loss. It was as though 100 Refinement sect had turned into a public enemy that everyone wanted to step on. Chapter 943, I'd like to try. Chapter 943, I'd like to try. Heavenly Dipper sect, Chaos Essence sect and Sword sect expressed their stance. The other 3 immortal sects watched coldly from the sidelines. The Void Reversion monks of the 3 major Buddhist monasteries, Hollow, Formless and Wisdom, that came to attend the tea party lowered their heads. It was clear that they did not want to get involved in this matter. Most of the time, the Buddhist sects were aloof from worldly affairs and rarely participated in fights between sections. If they can't even fight for the title of the Great Weapon Refinement Master, 100 Refinement sect is truly unworthy of their reputation as one of the 4 unorthodox groups. Actually, there's nothing wrong with letting Hellfire Hall replace 100 Refinement sect. In the cultivation world, strength is everything. That's normal. Many cultivators discussed softly. Dao Being Yu Ding stood up slowly with a grim expression and shouted, trying to take over 100 Refinement sect's position just because of a weapon refinement competition? What a joke. Everyone has the rights except you guys from Hellfire Hall. How dare a traitor of 100 Refinement sect try to reign supreme? Ridiculous. Ha ha ha. Ming Han reared his head in laughter and said, I think you're the one who's truly laughable. 100 Refinement sect is old and decayed. If you don't think about advancing, you'll only exist in name. Master could not bear to see the decline of the Tao of weapon refinement, and that's why he decided to establish his own sect. Yet, he managed to achieve this within a few thousand years. Who would dare to claim that he's unqualified? As the saying goes, there's no order in understanding the Tao, and those who are skilled are the masters. Among the 5 heretical doctrines, the sect master of corpse refinement cult was once a disciple of puppet sect. Right now, isn't that senior still creating a world-shaking achievement that's on par with puppet sect? Master is extremely talented and created his own Tao of refining weapons using hellfire. With his current achievements, he has already surpassed everyone in 100 Refinement sect. Who dares to say that he's not qualified? Ming Han had a haughty expression and his sleeves fluttered in high spirits. His words were forceful and many of the surrounding cultivators nodded silently in agreement. He had just won the weapon refinement competition and was young and impetuous. When he said those words, his aura was torrential. Although Dao Being Yu Ding's cultivation realm was high, he paled in comparison. even the people of 100 Refinement sect harbored doubts in their minds. Could the sect have truly fallen to such an irreversible state? Nangong Ling hugged Lu Hanyan and glared at the dazzling Ming Han not far away, his eyes filled with grief and indignation. Dao Bing Yuding looked towards the three unorthodox groups. No matter what, since time immemorial, the four unorthodox groups were on the same side. If 100 Refinement sect was in trouble, the other three unorthodox groups would not sit idly by. Dao Lord Lan Yu swept her gaze across the faces of Chaos Essence sect, Heavenly Dipper sect and Sword sect and sighed internally without saying anything. It was clear that Hellfire Hall came prepared for today's matter. With the support of the three immortal sects, it was useless even if Thousand Crane sect stood out. They might even offend the three immortal sects. The gains would not make up for the losses. Tang Yu of Elixir Yang sect could not take it lying down and declared, "Fellow Taoist Ming Han, you're wrong. 100 Refinement sect has a long history and a strong foundation. They are not as depraved as the way you make them out to be. Furthermore, the positions of the four unorthodox groups are not to be underestimated. How can their statuses be decided through the mere outcome between two great weapon refinement masters?"
Foo.
Ming Han chuckled once more and declared, "Among the Grandmasters, 100 Refinement sect is even less of a match. Since all the major sects are present today, let me ask 100 Refinement sect this. If my master were to come forth, which of you in 100 Refinement sect can beat him in weapon refinement?" The 100 Refinement sect cultivators were at a loss. Dao Bing Yuding did not say anything either. Prior to this, the weapon refinement grandmaster of 100 Refinement sect had fought with the Hall Master of Hellfire Hall and suffered a crushing defeat. The reason why the Thousand Crane Tea Party was so important was because 100 Refinement sect wanted to make use of this opportunity to get back at them. To think that it would end in a crushing defeat. Although Ming Han was a nascent soul, at that moment, he was already in the limelight. Pointing in the direction of 100 Refinement sect, he hollered, "You guys can win in the battle for the title of a great master. You guys don't dare to accept the challenge for a battle between grandmasters. 100 Refinement sect, what rights do you have to remain as one of the four unorthodox groups?" His voice boomed like thunder in the ears of the 100 Refinement sect cultivators. 100 Refinement sect is finished. That's right. Even if 100 Refinement sect refuses to admit it, I'm afraid there won't be a place for 100 Refinement sect among the unorthodox groups after today. To think that a super sect that has been passed down through history would fall just like that. Many cultivators discussed without any reservations, no longer considering the feelings of 100 Refinement sect. Yi Tiancheng laughed coldly with a mocking look in his eyes. If I was a disciple of 100 Refinement sect, I would have long scrammed back to the sect. How can I still have the cheek to stay here? Finally, 100 Refinement sect cultivator could not withstand the pressure and stood up silently. Before long, a second 100 Refinement sect disciple stood up and left with his head lowered. When Dao Bing Yuding saw that, he extended his arm and moved his lips, as though he wanted to ask them to stay but could not manage to say anything. Yi Tiancheng's gaze was cold as his spirit consciousness released a fluctuation. He was already prepared for the WYRMS beneath his feet to head outside Thousand Crane sect and kill everyone from 100 Refinement sect. "Are you guys not leaving because you want to challenge me?" Ming Han looked at Dao Bing Yuding, Nangong Ling and the others with mockery in his eyes as he said with a smile, "Oh, I almost forgot. 100 Refinement sect has a long history and a strong foundation. There might be hidden dragons and crouching tigers, who knows? Anyone who is unconvinced can challenge me. If any of you can refine a connate perfected Lord Dermic weapon, I'll consider it my loss. How about that?" The cultivators of Hellfire Hall burst into laughter. "I'd like to try." Just as Dao Bing Yuding could not take it and was about to leave with the group of cultivators with an embarrassed expression, a voice sounded from the crowd. The cultivators were stunned and turned to look. A green-robed man walked through the crowd with a calm expression. It was Zimo. "It's you." Ming Han's gaze turned cold. Yi Tiancheng glared at Zimo with undisguised killing intent. This person had spoiled his plans time and time again. To think that he would appear now. Yi Tiancheng could not wait to strike and kill this person right now. "Little Granduncle Master, you." Nangong Ling and the other two looked at Zimo with bright eyes. Could it be that little Granduncle Master was not only a sword cultivator with shocking combat strength, but also an outstanding weapon refinement master?
Could little Granduncle Master really save 100 Refinement sect this time round? The three of them had never seen Zimo refine weapons before. Therefore, when Zimo stood out, endless anticipation filled their hearts. Dao Being Yuding's heart skipped a beat as well and his eyes lit up.
At that moment, he suddenly understood why the sect master and Dao Lord Scarlet Star had instructed him to obey the orders of this little Granduncle Master at the critical juncture before they left the sect.
So, this little Granduncle Master was the hidden trump card of 100 Refinement sect. Nangong Ling, Yuding and the other two looked at Zimo expectantly.
Unexpectedly, Zimo seemed to have thought of something and turned to look at Nangong Ling and the other two.
Clearing his throat, he asked, "Does anyone have a weapon tripod? Can I borrow it?"
Nangong Ling.
Ru Xian. Dao Being Yuding nearly spat out a mouthful of blood.
Everyone was stunned for a moment before bursting into laughter.
True weapon refinement masters viewed weapon tripods as their most important dermic weapons and carried them around everywhere. How could they not have weapon tripods? However, Zimo could not be blamed for this as well.
He had a weapon tripod that could refine spirit weapons but not one that could refine dermic weapons.
As for the bronze square tripod, it had already been refined into a destiny dermic weapon by his scarlet-haired spirit and was surrounded by demonic chi, making it inconvenient for him to reveal it. Chapter 944. Deceiving Everyone. Chapter 944. Deceiving Everyone.
Is Mo Ling here to embarrass himself?
You don't even have a weapon tripod and you want to fight against Ming Han? Don't say that. Perhaps he's truly a hidden expert who has long cultivated to the point where the tripod exists in his soul and he does not require it physically.
Ha 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 ha.
The cultivators burst into laughter with sarcastic remarks. Ru Xian rolled her eyes and sighed internally. Little Granduncle Master, why are you still causing trouble at a time like this?
Sigh.
Zimo was not bothered by the laughter around him and was calm. To be fair, he did not have much confidence in stepping forward this time round. Furthermore, if he were to rely on his true level in dermic weapon refinement, not to mention Ming Han and Lu Hanyen, anyone from 100 Refinement sect would be able to surpass him. Unlike the others, Lu Hanyen did not smile. From the first time she saw Zimo, she could sense that this person seemed to be shrouded by a mysterious aura with many secrets. Lying in Nangong Ling's embrace, she whispered, "Senior brother, lend your weapon tripod to Granduncle Master." Her weapon tripod was of the highest grade. However, due to the explosion of the flying sword earlier on, her weapon tripod was damaged as well and she had to repair it before it could be used for weapon refinement again. Nangong Ling was stunned and replied instinctively, "My weapon tripod is not of a high grade and is only a superior grade perfected Lord dermic weapon." Weapon tripods were naturally crucial to creating connate dermic weapons. The reason why Ming Han could succeed was because of his netherworld tripod. Unexpectedly, Zimo waved it off. "It's fine. Just lend me yours."
Foo. Ming Han was relieved when he heard that.
The moment Zimo stood out, he was truly unsure. Previously, he had come into contact with Zimo and did not know the latter's capabilities. However, when he saw that Zimo was going to use a superior grade weapon tripod, he knew that this man would definitely lose. "How dare you challenge me when you don't even know the basics of weapon refinement?" Ming Han shook his head and sneered. When Nangong Ling saw that Zimo was serious and did not seem like he was joking, he could only grit his teeth and send his weapon tripod over. Zimo received it and knocked on it, sizing it up. Dao Lord Lan Yu frowned and asked in a deep voice, "Mo Ling, are you serious? This is a weapon refinement battle. If you're trying to cause trouble, don't blame me for chasing you out." "Of course I'm being serious." Zimo nodded. "Senior, please set up your spirit consciousness barrier."
The process of weapon refinement would be carried out in the weapon tripod.
However, many of the techniques and secret skills used for spirit gathering were extremely secretive. In order to prevent outsiders from using their spirit consciousness to probe, they would set up barriers outside. Dao Lord Lan Yu harumphed coldly and her glabella shone as a barrier was set up. The barrier could block one's spirit consciousness but it could not block one's vision.
That was normal. If vision was blocked, it would be meaningless to watch the weapon refinement process. Senior Brother Nangong, I still have a small piece of meteorite left. Hand it over to Granduncle Master. Lu Hanyen took out a small stone from her storage bag and handed it over. The first step of creating weapons was material selection. In order to refine connate dermic weapons, materials were even more important. Zimo waved it off. There's no need. I've prepared a material for myself. With that said, he flipped his palm. Everyone focused their gazes and saw a milky white cobblestone lying quietly in Zimo's palm. What material is that? I don't know. I've never seen it before. What can he refine with that gigantic material? After tempering and removing the impurities, he should be able to refine an embroidery needle, right? Everyone from Hellfire Hall burst into laughter. Ming Han frowned. He did not recognize the material either. However, he was not bothered. The flames of a nascent soul could not smelt materials that were truly heavenly defying. In reality, even the 3 Dharma characteristic Tao Lords present did not recognize the cobblestone, let alone Ming Han and the others. Zimo looked at the expressions of the crowd and was silent. There were few cultivators in Tianhuang mainland that could recognize the origin of this stone, let alone the people in the mystic courtyard. That stone was the illumination stone that was hidden in Zimo's right eye. The illumination stone was obtained by Tao Lord Extreme Fire in a primordial ruin. However, he did not know the origin of the stone. As for the red-headed ghost at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, he merely mentioned a few possibilities and was unsure. No matter what, the illumination stone was very strong. The secret skill of the dragon race's illumination dragon eye was comprehended through the illumination stone. The illumination sword formation was also comprehended through the illumination stone. The stone had been hidden in Zimo's right eye for the past few years without any activity. However, perhaps because he was cultivating the illumination dragon eye, a month ago, he sensed that he had formed a connection with the illumination stone. The illumination stone seemed to have become a part of his body and could change according to his wishes. Of course, that did not have much of an impact on Zimo and would not change anything either. It was only earlier on that he thought of a possibility under the mystic tea tree. Perhaps, he could split the illumination stone into equal parts to refine them in the form of flying swords. That way, he would be able to form a set of flying swords easily. A flying sword as such might not be considered as a dermic weapon. However, its core was the illumination stone that contained countless secrets. It was indestructible and definitely not weaker than dermic weapons. There were many mystical treasures and natural oddities in the world. Even without any dermic patterns, they were extremely powerful and unshakable. For example, there were the 7 unique treasures. There was Monkey's Imminent. There was the Creation Green Lotus. There was the Siraka flower. The illumination stone was one of them as well. Zimo's plan was simple. He wanted to make use of the illumination stone and the secretiveness of the weapon refinement process to deceive everyone right before their very eyes. The reason why he did not appear despite the aggressive actions of many sects earlier on was because he was contemplating the feasibility of this plan under the tea tree. He only stood out after he deduced the entire process once through. Of course, there were many uncertainties regarding this plan. Even Zimo himself was not confident that it would work. He tried his best to compose himself as he rose slowly. Waving his sleeves, he swept up the weapon tripod on the ground and made it hover in front of him. Thereafter, he placed the illumination stone into the weapon tripod. Swoosh! Zimo conjured a dermic art and a scarlet flame appeared in his palm. It was the immortal Tao fire. He placed it under the weapon tripod and started smelting it continuously. The process looked legitimate. In reality, Zimo was merely putting on an act. An hour passed and the immortal Tao fire almost burned through the weapon tripod, but there was still no reaction from the illumination stone. In fact, Zimo was relieved when he saw that. At the very least, it proved that the illumination stone was indestructible. Typically speaking, forging process would begin after the smelting and material selection process. If he wanted to deceive everyone present, the forging process would be the most important. Chapter 945,
Success. Chapter 945. Success.
Qi.
Ming Han laughed coldly. Although Su Zimo did not make any major mistakes in his weapon refinement steps, in the eyes of an experienced great weapon refinement master like Ming Han, he looked extremely amateurish in his actions. Ming Han stood by the side with his arms crossed. He was in no hurry at all, waiting to see Su Zimo make a fool of himself. According to his predictions, Su Zimo would only be able to create 3 dermic patterns at most. If his luck was bad, he might not even be able to condense a single dermic pattern. Su Zimo continued his weapon refinement as though no one was around. Under normal circumstances, at the forging step, the spirit materials within should have already melted into a molten form, burning scarlet like lava. However, the illumination stone in Su Zimo's weapon tripod was still the same. Only, under the control of Su Zimo's spirit consciousness, the illumination stone gradually separated into 36 stones that were the size of a water droplet. In his mind, one of the water droplets gradually transformed into the shape of a thin, exquisite flying sword. Thereafter, Su Zimo's lips curled and a smile appeared in his eyes. With a thought of his spirit consciousness, a pattern appeared on the body of the flying sword, looking like a dermic pattern. His spirit consciousness moved and another pattern appeared on the sword. Those patterns were not condensed on the sword with dermic powers but etched onto the sword's body. Although it was a fake dermic pattern, it looked no different from the real one. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the blink of an eye, 6 patterns appeared on the sword. If Su Zimo wanted to, he could even create 7 or 8 dermic patterns, let alone 6. Everything could be decided with a single thought. Of course, if he created 7 or 8 patterns, he would be exposed instantly. Typically speaking, the process of forging required a relatively short period of time unless it was an extremely complicated form. However, it was different for Su Zimo. He had spent an extremely long time in the forging step. Not only did he have to create a total of 36 flying swords, he also had to ensure that there was no deviation in the size, shape and location of the patterns on the 36 flying swords. That was an extremely draining task. Even the forging of a flying sword takes so long. Seems like this person isn't that capable. Fufu, now I'm even looking forward to see what sort of spectacular feat he is going to produce in the tempering and spirit gathering step. Many cultivators could not see through the weapon tripod with their eyes and their spirit consciousnesses were isolated, so they naturally did not know what was happening inside. If anyone could see the situation inside the weapon tripod, their eyeballs would pop out of their sockets. After a long time, Su Zimo finally completed his forging step. The most interesting part of the entire weapon refinement process was tempering and spirit gathering. Many cultivators became impatient a long time ago when the forging step took close to 2 hours to complete. Next was tempering. 100 Refinement Sect had a specialized secret tempering technique, 1000 Tempered Finger. Back then, Tao Lord Extreme Fire merely imparted a little bit of knowledge to him. It was only 3 months ago that he imparted all the profoundness of the 1000 Tempered Finger. This was Su Zimo's first time executing this secret skill. Naturally, the tempering process looked incomparably amateurish. Everyone from 100 Refinement Sect either lowered their heads or glanced sideways, embarrassed to watch. His tempering method was way too crude. Su Zimo did not mind at all. He pretended to temper for a long time before beginning on spirit gathering. Many cultivators perked up and waited to watch the show. It was easy for all sorts of trouble to occur during the spirit gathering stage. If the spirit gathering step failed and the weapon refinement master's weapon that was being refined exploded, it would take a huge toll on the weapon refinement master's mental state. Coupled with the unexpected change of events that might lead to a reverse flow of qi into their hearts, many of them would faint on the spot. Many of them would be severely injured as well. That was the same thing that happened to Lu Hanyan. Ru Xian prayed silently. The explosion of the flying sword is inevitable. I only hope that the heavens will bless little granduncle master so that he will be fine. Whoosh. Before long, a beam of light shone from the weapon tripod. Everyone was stunned. A dermic pattern was formed. Ming Han's expression was calm. It was normal for a dermic pattern to be condensed. There was nothing to be alarmed about. Not long after, a second light flashed. This meant that 2 dermic patterns were already formed.
No one could see what was happening within the weapon tripod. In reality, it was silent within the weapon tripod and Zimo was not condensing any dermic patterns. Given his nascent soul realm cultivation, it was extremely easy for him to create some light tricks from within the weapon tripod. Dao Lord Lan Yu frowned slightly. She felt that something was amiss. However, although she was the master of a sect, she could not use her spirit consciousness to check on the situation inside while others were refining weapons. That would be a taboo for weapon refinement masters. In reality, if there was a seasoned weapon refinement grandmaster present, Zimo's tricks wouldn't have been able to deceive the former's rich experience. Unfortunately, there were no weapon refinement grandmasters at the Thousand Crane Tea Party. Whoosh! Before long, a third light flashed. Eh! This time round, even Ming Han exclaimed softly. Of course, he was not nervous. The further one progressed in spirit gathering, the more difficult it would be and the lower the chances of success. At least half of the weapon refinement masters present could condense 3 dermic patterns. While he was pondering, a fourth light flashed. 4 dermic patterns. This time round, even the crowd was stirred. Many cultivators were no longer looking down on him. No matter what, any weapon refinement master that could refine a supreme-grade dermic weapon with 4 dermic patterns would be considered skillful. A moment later, a fifth light burst forth. This time round, the crowd was in an uproar. Even the people of 100 Refinement sect widened their eyes in disbelief. Nangong Ling and the other 2 were dumbfounded. They could not believe that their little granduncle master who did not have a weapon tripod of his own and possessed amateurish weapon refinement techniques could create a perfect-grade perfected Lord Dermic weapon using a battered weapon tripod. Ming Han frowned deeply. He could sense that something was amiss as well, but he could not pinpoint the exact reason. Furthermore, he could already feel the pressure. Could this Mo Ling really create a connate perfected Lord Dermic weapon? Ming Han narrowed his gaze at Zimo and pondered. An unknown period of time passed. Whoosh! A bedazzling light burst forth from the weapon tripod once more as dermic powers surged and filled the void. Ah! A series of exclamations broke out from the crowd. The 6th dermic pattern lit up and the crowd was shocked. That's impossible. Ming Han's expression darkened as he grit his teeth. There's no way it's that easy creating 6 dermic patterns. I refuse to believe it. Ming Han was not the only one who did not believe it. Most of the cultivators present, including those of 100 Refinement sect, could not believe it and their eyes were filled with disbelief. Without giving the crowd much time to react, Zimo poured the cold water he prepared into the weapon tripod. Shing! Green smoke billowed. The quenching was complete. In reality, quenching was done by placing a flying sword that was burned scarlet into cold water. However, nothing happened to the illumination stone despite it being burned by the immortal Dao fire. If he were to take out the flying sword, he would be exposed right away. Since the weapon tripod was burning hot, sizzling sounds would definitely be produced when cold water was poured within. When the cultivators present saw that, they merely thought that this man's quenching technique was indeed unique and did not think too much about it. Success! Finally, it was time to see the truth. Looking at the flustered Ming Han not far away, Zimo smiled gently. If no one noticed anything amiss by this point, Ming Han would be the next to suffer. Chapter 946, Mass Production. Chapter 946, Mass Production. Where's your flying sword? Show it to us. Ming Han shouted with widened eyes. Don't be hasty. With a calm expression, Zimo hesitated for a moment before controlling one of the flying swords to rise slowly from the weapon tripod. If nobody could see the issue with this flying sword, it would mean that everything would be fine. If anyone could tell that something was amiss, it would be a joke even if he brought out all 36 flying swords. Right in front of everyone, a tiny and exquisite flying sword appeared. It was milky white and looked like a thin silver needle. What's this? How can that be called a flying sword? Ha 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 ha, this is clearly an embroidery needle. Did Mo Ling create an embroidery needle so that he can become a seamstress? The cultivators of Hellfire Hall mocked. However, most of the cultivators present did not laugh. That was because most of the people present were nascent soul paragons. As long as they focused their gazes, they would be able to tell that although the dermic weapon was small and exquisite, it was indeed in the form of a flying sword. Furthermore, there were 6 faint patterns on the sword. Although the dermic weapon was small, it was indeed a connate dermic weapon with 6 dermic patterns. What do we do now? Both of them have refined connate dermic weapons and can be given the title of Great Weapon Refinement Masters. However, there's no clear victor between the two of them and these 2 major sections. Furthermore, Mo Ling seemed to have taken a shorter time than Ming Han to refine that weapon. Many cultivators discussed. Everyone from 100 Refinement sect looked excited. They had not expected things to turn out this way. An unexpected change of events seemed to have opened up a path of hope for them. Ming Han frowned. He felt that something was amiss, but he could not figure it out right away. When he heard the discussions around him, he felt frustrated and his mind was even more confused. Even connate dermic weapons have differences in strength. Ming Han laughed coldly. How can your embroidery needle be compared to my flying sword? We'll know once we compare. Zimo smiled indifferently and controlled the tiny and exquisite flying sword to stab towards Ming Han. In the void, a cold glint flashed and the flying sword was already close. Ming Han was shocked. Without thinking, he summoned the flying sword that he had just refined and slashed at the incoming flying sword. Clang! Ming Han shuddered. His flying sword was repelled by the tiny flying sword and the glow on it dimmed significantly. The cultivators were moved. It could be said that Ming Han's flying sword was merely repelled because his dermic powers were inferior to Zimo. However, the fact that the glow of Ming Han's flying sword dimmed proved that its blade was inferior to the tiny flying sword Zimo refined. Zimo's flying sword hovered in midair and shone with a milky white glow, as though it could absorb the energy of the scorching sun. It grew brighter by the moment. The essence of the flying sword was the illumination stone. Even a connate dermic weapon might not be able to challenge it. When Zimo cultivated his illumination eye daily, it was by relying on the blazing sun. The blazing sun and illumination stone had a mysterious connection to one another to begin with, so it was no surprise that something like this would happen. However, to many cultivators, it was extremely shocking. Although this flying sword is small, it can attract the light of the blazing sun. It's truly an eye-opener. Seems like Hellfire Hall lost the weapon refinement battle. The expressions of the cultivators of Heavenly Dipper sect, Chaos Essence sect and Sword sect darkened gradually. If Hellfire Hall lost, they would have no reason to attack 100 Refinement sect. It did not matter what would happen in the future. At the very least, 100 Refinement sect's crisis at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party would be resolved. Since they're both connate perfected Lord dermic weapons, I think we should just consider this a draw. Right then, perfected Lord Panglon of Heavenly Dipper sect said indifferently. Why is it a draw? That's right, Ming Han's flying sword is clearly not a match. That's right. We're even just using an ordinary weapon tripod. There was no way the 100 Refinement sect cultivators would be willing to let things go just like that given their pent-up frustrations. That's enough. Dao Lord Lan Yu stood out at the right time and said indifferently, this weapon refinement competition is truly an eye-opener. Since both cultivators managed to refine connate dermic weapons, it should be a draw. As for the difference in strength between the connate dermic weapons, it's only natural for there to be a difference since they are being used by different cultivators. Both of you will be great weapon refinement masters and you can share a cup of supreme-grade mystic tea together. This will be the end of the issue. There's no need for further arguments. Dao Lord Lan Yu was clearly biased. The 100 Refinement sect cultivators were indignant. Dao Being Yu Ding shook his head and gestured for everyone to quiet down. 1,000 Crane sect was the host of this tea party, and since those were the words of a sect master, there was no point contesting further. Jian Wuzong shouted, that's right. Hurry up and proceed to the next segment. It's time to settle some grudges. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Instantly, countless murderous and hostile gazes landed on Zimo. Countless people wanted to kill Zimo at the 1,000 Crane Tea Party. All right. Dao Lord Lan Yu nodded. Since that's the case, I'll invite the two of you to drink this tea and rest for a while. After that, we'll proceed to the second segment of the tea party, the fight between the paragons. Is he even fit to share a cup of tea with me? Just as everyone thought that this matter was over, Zimo opened his mouth slowly and sneered. Do you have any objections? Dao Lord Lan Yu's gaze turned grim. Zimo's repeated provocations had already enraged her, but she had been restraining herself. I've got no objections. Zimo replied indifferently. However, the outcome of this weapon refinement fight is clear. Thereafter, he beckoned gently to the weapon tripod that was floating in midair, and a large number of flying swords hovered out. There were a total of 35. Including the one earlier, there were a total of 36 flying swords that were identical. The 36 flying swords shone in harmony with the blazing sun above their heads, emitting a milky white glow that was increasingly resplendent. Pest! The crowd gasped. That scene was way too shocking. Even the 3 Dharma characteristic Dao Lords present watched with widened eyes in disbelief. What in the world is that? This person refined a total of 36 flying swords, and all of them are connate dermic weapons. Not only are there 36 connate dermic weapons, they are identical as well. This is a complete set of flying swords. This is way too terrifying. Heavens! Is this even humanly possible? It was shocking enough that he could refine a single connate perfected Lord dermic weapon. But now, Zimo threw out a huge lump of them. The visual and mental impact was indescribable. The cultivators were dumbfounded and their jaws almost dropped to the ground. What's the background of this guy? Everyone else has to painstakingly create a single connate dermic weapon, and yet he's able to mass-produce them. What's the point of competing then? Ming Han is bloody weak compared to this. As though he was struck by lightning, Ming Han slumped to the ground with widened eyes. His mind went blank as he shook his head repeatedly. This is impossible. This is impossible. The repeated blows had already left him in a daze. Chapter 947. Declaration of War. Chapter 947. Declaration of War. When Zimo saw that the situation was set, he beckoned gently and put away the 36 flying swords. No matter what, his flying swords were not connate dermic weapons. If the entire set was exposed for too long, there was no guarantee that nothing would happen. Even if the 36 flying swords were gathered together, they did not take up much space. Holding them in his palm, Zimo casually swiped his brow and the 36 flying swords entered his right eye silently. Even if your 100 refinement sect wins this weapon refinement battle, it doesn't mean anything. The person who spoke was seated at the front of Hellfire Hall. He was the only void reversion of Hellfire Hall for this trip, and his Dao title was Refinement Peak. Everyone knew that by saying that, it meant that Hellfire Hall had admitted defeat. Dao being Refinement Peak's face darkened as he said slowly, in a weapon refinement battle between Grandmasters, there's nobody from 100 refinement sect that can match our Hall Master. That's not for sure. Zimo replied indifferently, if you guys from Hellfire Hall are indignant, 100 refinement sect will come looking for you guys after the tea party. I'm just afraid that you won't dare to accept the challenge at that time. Everyone from 100 refinement sect felt guilty. They were well aware that no one in the sect could surpass the master of Hellfire Hall in terms of weapon refinement. The reason why Zimo dared to say that was naturally because of Dao Lord Extreme Fire. After the tea party, Dao Lord Extreme Fire would reconstruct his body and return in a domineering manner. Given his accomplishments in weapon refinement, he would definitely not lose to the Hall Master of Hellfire Hall. Alright, let's wait and see. Dao being Refinement Peak sneered. After returning the weapon tripod to Nangong Ling, Zimo turned around and looked at Dao Lord Lan Yu, who was not far away. Senior, the outcome of this weapon refinement battle should be clear. Please give me some tea. Dao Lord Lan Yu was extremely unwilling. However, she naturally could not break the rules set by Thousand Cranes sect in front of everyone. Taking a deep breath, Dao Lord Lan Yu composed herself and said slowly, "Grant the tea." Before long, a steaming cup of supreme-grade mystic tea was handed to Zimo. The Dharma characteristic elder of Thousand Cranes sect was comparatively friendly towards Zimo and nodded with a smile. This tea is best drunk when it's warm. Drink it and use your essence spirit to comprehend the mysteries within. Thank you, Senior. Zimo received the supreme-grade mystic tea but did not drink it. Instead, he carried the teacup and returned to the front of 100 Refinement sect. Have a drink. Under countless gazes, Zimo handed the supreme-grade mystic tea to Lu Hanyan. The cultivators were moved. The true focus of Thousand Crane Tea Party was the mystic tea. The reason why all the nascent soul paragons of the Middle Continent gathered here was none other than to drink a cup of mystic tea. Even the ordinary mystic tea was an incredible opportunity alongside incomparable glory. Furthermore, there were only 5 cups of supreme-grade mystic tea. To be precise, up till this point of the tea party, there were only 2 cups remaining, including the one in Zimo's hands. But now, he had given away the supreme-grade mystic tea. Isn't that Mo Ling way too generous? The moment he appeared earlier on, he gave away a Connate perfected Lord Dermic weapon. Now, he's even giving away a supreme-grade mystic tea. I can't take it anymore. I've already fallen for him. A Thousand Crane sect female cultivator whispered with an infatuated expression. Another female cultivator murmured as well. I can't take it anymore. If I were in her shoes, I would have fainted from happiness the moment that supreme-grade mystic tea was handed to me. Everyone from 100 Refinement sect widened their eyes in shock too. Many people looked at Zimo and Lu Hanyan with odd expressions. Could it be that the beauty of 100 Refinement sect was already taken? Ru Xian felt a little envious and upset. Nangong Ling's expression dimmed as well. As time passed by, he realized that the gap between him and Little Granduncle Master was getting wider and wider, even beyond his reach. Perhaps, only Lu Hanyan knew that Zimo had no feelings for her. Don't think too much. Zimo said softly. Hanyan failed her spirit gathering and it will be difficult for her injured essence spirit to recover completely. This supreme-grade mystic tea can heal her essence spirit. Ru Xian and Nangong Ling's hearts skipped a beat. They could tell that Zimo was saying that to them. Nangong Ling was relieved and smiled foolishly. He turned to Lu Hanyan and said, that's right. Once you drink this tea, Hanyan, there's a high chance that your essence spirit will recover immediately. But you were the one who won this cup of tea, Granduncle Master. Lu Hanyan's eyes were red as she choked. It's all thanks to you that the sect's reputation is preserved. I'm not fit to drink this tea. You're thinking too much. You're the only one in the sect who's qualified to drink this cup of tea. Zimo smiled gently and placed the supreme-grade mystic tea in Lu Hanyan's hands. He said in an unquestionable manner, drink it. Don't feel pressured. His words were truly not meant to comfort Lu Hanyan. The reason why he was able to win the weapon refinement competition was entirely because of tricks and not because of his actual skill in weapon refinement. In 100 Refinement sect, only Lu Hanyan was qualified to drink this tea. Go ahead and drink it, Little Granduncle Master has already said so. Nangong Ling persuaded with a smile. Lu Hanyan shook her head still. There's only 1 cup of supreme-grade mystic tea. If I take it, Granduncle Master will have nothing at all. Lu Hanyan said, Granduncle Master is also at the nascent soul realm. This supreme-grade mystic tea is extremely important to him too. Who said that there's only 1 cup of supreme-grade mystic tea? Zimo smiled gently and pointed to the only remaining green tea leaf on the tip of the mystic tea tree. There's another cup. Ah! Nangong Ling and the other 2 were stunned before their expressions changed. Everyone knew that the remaining cup was for the final victor of the fight between the Paragons, the #1 perfected Lord of Middle Continent. By saying that, did Little Granduncle Master mean? Nangong Ling hurriedly sent a voice transmission. Little Granduncle Master, don't be rash. 100 Refinement sect has fulfilled our purpose for this trip and there's no need for us to cause trouble. The matter of 100 Refinement sect has ended, but mine has only just started. Patting Nangong Ling on the shoulder, Zimo said softly, for everything that's going to happen next, neither you nor 100 Refinement sect should get involved. Before Nangong Ling and the others could react, Zimo had already turned around and said word by word, I'm going to get my hands on that final cup of supreme-grade mystic tea. The crowd was in an uproar. A declaration of war. That was a blatant declaration of war. Such guts. Seated on the throne, Yi Tiancheng was still motionless as he said coldly with a murderous gaze. Splash. The 9 WRS were ready to charge as demonic chi surged and the gigantic chains on their bodies let out a terrifying sound. The remaining 8 maidservants beside him glared at Zimo coldly. "It's finally about to begin?" Perfected Lord Panglon of Heavenly Dipper Sect said with a smile as a cold glint flashed in his eyes. Clang! Jian Wuzong could not hold it in any longer and drew his sword right away. He glared at Zimo with a vicious glint, prepared to charge forward at any moment to wash away his shame. This time round, he wielded his sword first. He did not heed Hang Qiuyu's advice at all. He was third on the phenomenon ranking. Although Hang Qiuyu was his senior brother, he was only ranked 8th on the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago and even lost to an unknown sword cultivator. In Jian Wuzong's heart, Hang Qiuyu could not be compared to him. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of blades being unsheathed echoed. Many paragons stood up with surging battle intent. The fight between paragons was about to begin. Chapter 948. Get Down. Chapter 948. Get Down. Looking at Zimo's back view, Nangong Ling and the other 2 exchanged glances with conflicted expressions. For some reason, the 3 of them felt that Zimo's words earlier on had another meaning. The 3 of them guessed correctly. Zimo's words were to draw a clear line between him and 100 Refinement Sect. If he were to fight against the paragons, he might not be able to hide his identity. He did not want to cause too much trouble for 100 Refinement Sect. How arrogant! I'll see what happens to you. Who do you think you are? There's only 1 cup of supreme-grade mystic tea and you think you can get your hands on it just because you want to? Foo-foo. Only the #1 perfected lord of the Middle Continent is qualified to have the supreme-grade mystic tea. How dare you? There was no need for Yi Tiancheng to say anything. There were already many nascent soul paragons present who could not hold back and stood out, mocking and ridiculing. In their hearts, there were only a few people who could become the #1 perfected lord. How could Mo Ling compare to them? Furthermore, Zimo's tone displeased the nascent soul paragons. If Yi Tiancheng were to say something like that, they would endure it even if they were displeased. Mo Ling was completely unknown and only rose to fame in the past month. Most cultivators had not heard of him before and were naturally indignant. Little Granduncle Master, even if you want to take part in the Paragon battle, you should rest first. Nangong Ling hurriedly sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness and reminded, "You've just participated in the weapon refinement competition and must have consumed a lot of your mental strength. It's not good for you to start a fight now." At the same time, Perfected Lord Panglon chuckled and shook his head. He's a young man after all. He can't control his temper. "Senior brother, what do you mean?" a cultivator asked. Perfected Lord Panglon said resolutely, "That lad has just refined so many connate dermic weapons and expended a lot of his energy. Now that he's rushing to challenge Yi Tiancheng, he's definitely courting death. I'm willing to bet that he'll be exhausted to death by the other paragons before Yi Tiancheng even makes a move." How strong was Zimo's hearing? Although Perfected Lord Panglan's voice was as soft as a mosquito and insignificant in the noisy crowd, he could hear it clearly. However, he was calm and did not mind at all. That was because the situation Nangong Ling and Perfected Lord Panglon were concerned about was completely non-existent. He was merely putting on an act for the weapon refinement earlier on and did not expend any energy at all. Dao Lord Lanyu stood up slowly and said in a deep voice, "Since everyone can't wait any longer, I'll now announce the official start of the Paragon battle." The moment she said that, Zimo turned around and pointed at Yi Tiancheng, who was sitting high and mighty on his throne, saying slowly, "Get down." Everyone was shocked. What was going on? Did it mean that Mo Ling wanted to challenge the #1 perfected lord, Yi Tiancheng? Was this person tired of living and could not wait to die? Yi Tiancheng sat motionlessly on the throne and looked down at Zimo coldly with disdain. At this point, he was no longer anxious. In his eyes, Zimo was already a dead man. Or rather, there was no need for him to do it personally. Hee hee. What a joke. Who do you think you are to challenge my master? The 2 maidservants beside Yi Tiancheng smirked. Ha 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 ha. This Mo Ling doesn't even know the rules of the Paragon battle and he's jumping out to die. Interesting. A series of laughter burst forth from the crowd.
Oh.
Surveying his surroundings, Zimo asked, "What rules are there for the Paragon battle?" Dao Lord Lan Yu said in a deep voice, "Apart from Yi Tiancheng and perfected Lord Pang Lan who are at the top of the phenomenon ranking, all the other Paragons have to fight in pairs until 2 victors are decided. Only then can they challenge Yi Tiancheng and perfected Lord Pang Lan." Yi Tiancheng grinned. "In other words, you're not even qualified to challenge me." Frowning, Zimo looked at Dao Lord Lan Yu and asked, "If I want to fight against Yi Tiancheng, I'll have to fight against the other Paragons one step at a time." "That's right." Dao Lord Lan Yu nodded. "Otherwise, Yi Tiancheng be annoyed to death if he's challenged by just about anybody." "Oh, got it." Zimo nodded with a calm expression. He looked around and said indifferently, "I'm going to cripple Yi Tiancheng now. Anyone who wishes to stop me can come up. There's no need to fight in pairs. Anyone who's unhappy can come at me at any time. I'll take them all." The crowd was in an uproar. Is he crazy? He wants to suppress all the Paragons here by himself. I think he really thinks that he's the #1 perfected lord and wants to sweep through all the Paragons present. He's truly courting death. Not to mention the other cultivators, everyone from 100 Refinement sect was stunned. Little Granduncle Master must be crazy. Nangong Ling shook his head repeatedly and murmured. Even Yi Tiancheng and perfected Lord Pang Lan would not be so arrogant as to dare to claim that they can suppress all the Paragons present. To be precise, apart from Lang Ro, Little Fatty and the others who knew about Zimo's background, almost no one present thought highly of him. Of course, there were a few cultivators who frowned in deep thought and retained their opinions. Among them was Hang Qiuyu of Sword Sect. Jian Wuzong reared his head in laughter and grit his teeth. That man is extremely arrogant and thinks nothing of the heroes of the world. He's courting death. Not necessarily. Hang Qiuyu shook his head. At the very least in his memories, there was a monster incarnate who had the strength to make such bold claims. He would never forget that person for the rest of his life. That figure had shocked him way too much in both the ancient battlefields. Fairy Luo Shui, the only void reversion of Snowdrift Valley, looked at the green figure and murmured softly, "How bold! If this person isn't a lunatic, his boldness alone is enough to fight for the title of the #1 perfected lord." After pondering for a moment, Dao Lord Lan Yu reminded him, "In the Paragon battle, you're not allowed to fight to the death or target the essence spirit." The crowd was in an uproar. There were already many nascent soul Paragons who could not hold themselves back and wanted to charge forward to fight Zimo. In reality, there were not many Paragons of the major sects and factions in the Middle Continent who truly had grudges with Zimo. However, at that moment, many Paragons were tempted. Apart from some who were indignant and wanted to teach Zimo a lesson, most of them targeted the treasures on him. Only fighting to the death was disallowed for the Paragon battle. However, there were no restrictions against fighting for the other party's treasures. If they could defeat Zimo, everyone could have a legitimate reason to snatch away all of Zimo's treasures, including the 36 connate flying swords that were revealed earlier on. In the eyes of the cultivators right now, Zimo was like a massive treasure trove that was waiting for them to fight for. Many cultivators glared at Zimo with clear greed in their eyes. Zimo's gaze was cold. Sensing the intentions of the Paragons, he said slowly, "Also, don't blame me for not reminding everyone. You're not allowed to fight to the death in the Paragon battle, but I'm extremely heavy-handed. The person I'm going to cripple is Yi Tiancheng. It's best not to look for trouble if you're unrelated." Chapter 949. Single-Handed Suppressions. Chapter 949. Single-Handed Suppression. How arrogant! I've been pissed off at your attitude since a long time ago. A Paragon from Peach Blossom Peak, an upper sect of the Middle Continent, stood out and strode towards Zimo, shouting, "I'm perfected Lord Tianliang, come." Before he could finish, he felt a green figure flash by. Bang! Before he could react, his chest was struck by a tremendous impact and he was sent flying, spitting out blood. That person laid on the ground motionlessly. Although his essence spirit was fine, The bones in his chest were shattered by Zimo's punch and he fainted on the spot in unbearable pain. The nascent soul paragon of Peach Blossom Peak merely showed his face and said half a sentence before being drowned in the crowd. I heard that you're a sword cultivator as well. I'm Yen Ling of the Unparalleled Sword Sect. Do show me the way. A sword cultivator rushed out from the crowd and drew his sword before he even got close. The sword glowed in a piercingly cold manner. When the sword approached, it split into two and pierced towards Zimo's eyes with a sharp sword chi. Unparalleled Sword Sect was also one of the upper sects of the Middle Continent. Their sword techniques were known to be beguiling. This unparalleled sword Dao could be considered as one of the sect's secret skills. If one was caught off guard, they would be injured easily. Zimo narrowed his eyes. At the end of the day, the sword technique was nothing more than an illusion technique. Although it looked like there were two swords, in reality, only one of them was real. Zimo had terrifying eyesight after cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness all year round. Even without using the illumination dragon eye, he could see the flaws in the sword technique. Without dodging or retreating, Zimo extended his finger and flicked gently towards one of the incoming swords. Clang! The tip of his finger collided against the sword. There was the sound of metal clashing. The true body of the sword appeared and the sword quivered. Yen Ling's expression changed. Although Zimo merely flicked his finger casually, Yen Ling was the only one who could sense the terrifying power that was released. His palm was torn and blood gushed out. Yen Ling could not hold on to his sword and it flew out of his hands. Just as he was about to retreat, Zimo had already seized the opportunity and leaned against him gently. Yen Ling felt as though a massive mountain had slammed into him. His tendons and bones felt as though they were about to split apart as he was sent flying before slamming heavily onto the ground and fainting. He defeated two paragons in 2 moves. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Another 5 figures darted out and took up 5 different positions, revolving around Zimo with mysterious footsteps. They were the paragons of 5 Element Sect. When he first arrived at Thousand Crane Sect, Zimo had a conflict with the disciples of 5 Element Sect. Now that 5 Element Sect heard that Zimo wanted to suppress the Paragon's presence single-handedly, they summoned their 5 Elements formation and surrounded him. Arrogant fool, let's see how long you can last in this 5 Elements formation. A Paragon of 5 Elements Sect said coldly. Once the 5 Elements formation was activated, anything that was related to the 5 Elements would be weakened infinitely, be it weapons or dermic arts. Furthermore, as the formation changed, the power of their dermic arts would increase as well. What 5 Elements formation? Break! Zimo sneered and stomped on the ground. Boom! The ground quaked violently. Shocked, the 5 paragons shuddered and nearly fell to the ground. Even the channeling of the formation came to a stop. It was a fleeting opening that was difficult for others to catch. However, who was Zimo? He was the strongest monster incarnate in history. To him, this fleeting opening was the difference between victory as well as life and death. A paragon of 5 Element Sect had just stabilized himself and was about to continue channeling the formation when Zimo arrived and roared. The person felt as though a thunderbolt struck his mind and he froze. Furthermore, that was Zimo holding back. Otherwise, if Zimo were to use Thunderclap Kill at this distance, that person's essence spirit would be killed on the spot. Zimo's palm pressed gently on the person's chest. Snap! The person's chest caved in and he spat out blood, fainting on the spot. With one person severely injured, the 5 Elements formation could no longer be activated. In a flash, Zimo arrived before the 5 Element Sect cultivators and sent the remaining 4 paragons flying with a few punches and kicks. In his hands, paragons were as frail as babies. That person's physique is extremely strong and he is terrifying in melee combat. We can't fight him up close. A nascent soul paragon reminded loudly. Immediately after, more than 10 paragons stood out. However, they did not approach Zimo and merely stood far away, condensing dermic arts and controlling dermic weapons. Shoo! 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 Dermic weapons tore through the air one after another. Many paragons no longer held back and used their trump cards. Bang! Boom! Boom! Many dermic arts descended, covering the skies with a terrifying might. Zimo's expression was unchanged as his hands changed continuously, forming a mysterious hand seal. Opening his mouth slightly, he hollered "Pa!" The entire world went silent with that Sanskrit exclamation. Lowering his head, Zimo had a dignified expression and a divine Buddhist light shone from his body, illuminating all living beings. It was the Daming Dharmic Seal combined with the Daming Mantra. The power of the Dharmic Seal was at its limits. Furthermore, this was the only defensive Dharmic Seal among the 6 Daming Dharmic Seals, immovable foundation seal. Many Dharmic arts descended and dissipated the moment they made contact with the Buddha light without any ripples. Many Dharmic weapons froze in midair as well, trembling slightly and unable to stab down. Zimo remained unmoved and conjured a Dharmic seal with his hands, neutralizing the attacks of more than 10 paragons. When the monks of the 3 major Buddhist monasteries caught sight of this, their expressions changed as disbelief filled their eyes. Many of them recognized the origin of the Dharmic seal. Normally speaking, the Daming True Sutra was long lost. It was said that the cultivators who released the Dharmic seal recently were 2 people who appeared 100 years ago. One of them was the top of the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago, and the other was the 5th on the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago. Later on, the latter joined Depamara Temple as a young monk. But now, this top-tier cultivation technique of the Buddhist monasteries had surfaced from the hands of another cultivator. Narrowing her gaze, Tao Lord Lanyu focused on Zimo and swept her spirit consciousness across him. Finally, Tao Lord Lanyu discovered something amiss. "Sect Master, what's wrong?" Tao Lord Lanyu shook her head without saying anything. She merely frowned in deep thought. Right then, as though he had thought of something, Ming Han of Hellfire Hall suddenly charged forward with a ferocious expression and shouted, "I got it! I got it!" Those 36 flying swords earlier on were not connate Dharmic weapons. They were. Zimo swept his gaze and conjured hand seals. A ball of golden flames had already formed on his fingertips and floated towards Ming Han. Buddhist Tao fire. Before Ming Han could finish his sentence, he saw a ball of golden flames flying over. Frightened out of his wits, he hurriedly conjured a hellfire spear and thrust it towards the golden flames. Shing! The hellfire spear was minuscule and defenseless against the golden flames and was extinguished instantly. Before Ming Han could react, Zimo had already closed in and grabbed his throat, whispering into his ear, "You know too much." Snap! Ming Han's throat was crushed by Zimo. Although his essence spirit was still present, the rupture of his throat was equivalent to crippling him. Chapter 950. Fatal Encirclement. Chapter 950. Fatal Encirclement. Ming Han's words did not arouse much suspicion. The cultivators present merely thought that he was spouting nonsense after suffering a breakdown because he could not withstand the series of blows. The initial group of nascent soul paragons did not retreat. Each of them controlled their Dharmic weapons and conjured hand seals, preparing to attack Zimo once more. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. More than 10 more nascent soul paragons gathered, ready to take advantage of the situation. Ni! Zimo conjured hand seals and chanted Sanskrit. Boom! Golden light filled the skies. A gigantic golden palm tore through the firmament, covering the skies as it descended. The palm patterns on the golden palm were clearly visible and shone with a blinding golden light, suppressing the dozens of nascent soul paragons in midair with a majestic aura. Kill! Many nascent soul paragons attacked one after another, turning their Dharmic weapons to stab towards the golden palm. Clang! 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 Numerous Dharmic weapons stabbed into the palm and sparks flew everywhere. There was no way they could shake that divine and mighty palm. Many Dharmic arts struck it but nothing happened. It was one of the Daming Dharmic seals, Immortal Trap Seal. After Zimo advanced to the nascent soul realm, the Daming Dharmic seal was activated with his essence spirit. Coupled with the Daming mantra and Mingwang prayer beads, its power was already at its limits. Bang! Boom! Boom! The golden palm continued crushing down. Dodge! Many cultivators saw that the situation was not looking good and wanted to break free from the golden palm's range. However, the 5 fingers of the golden palm were already bending and closing, as though they were forming a prison. The immortal trap seal could even trap true immortals. No matter how many cultivators tried to escape, they could not break free from the cage formed by the 5 golden fingers. It was an extremely uncomfortable feeling. It was obvious that they would be able to escape with just a single step more. However, no matter how they fled, they could not break free of the range. The dozens of paragons could only watch helplessly as the 5 fingers closed in continuously, holding them together and exerting strength. All of them were squeezed together by that gigantic golden palm that rained in continuously. The crowd was shocked when they saw that. Ah! Finally, one of the paragons could not hold it in and let out a hysterical shriek with a horrified expression. Poof! 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 Under that immense pressure, blood mists burst forth from the bodies of many cultivators and their bones were snapped. One after another, figures fell to the ground. Although they did not die, their bodies were severely injured and it would be difficult for them to recover completely in the future. In the blink of an eye, dozens of nascent soul paragons were defeated. Everyone was shocked. The nascent souls that were initially restless stopped in their tracks and hesitated, not daring to move forward. Domineering. Ruthless. Decisive to kill. Those were the only thoughts in the minds of many cultivators as they looked at the green figure at the center of the battlefield. All the nascent souls that went up earlier on ended up in miserable states. Broken arms and legs were already considered minor injuries. Some cultivators were completely crippled. His domineering methods stunned all the nascent souls who wanted to hit him while he was down and take advantage of the situation. None of them dared to act rashly now. Isn't he a sword cultivator? How does he know Buddhist dermic arts? What dermic art is that? It doesn't seem like it belongs to the 6 Buddhist monasteries. Why is it so terrifying? Is he really going to sweep through all the paragons single-handedly? The initial fervor of the group of cultivators was completely suppressed by Zimo's thunderous methods. Yi Tiancheng sat on his throne with a calm expression. Fu! Perfected Lord Panglong smiled indifferently and was not bothered. The methods that Zimo displayed right now were indeed powerful and stunning. However, they were not enough to threaten him. Furthermore, they knew one thing. In their eyes, the dozens of nascent soul paragons that Zimo defeated were nothing and could be suppressed easily. That was because true paragons had pride in their hearts. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, true paragons could not be bothered to join forces with others. Furthermore, monster incarnates like him and Yi Tiancheng were renowned. Even if they managed to defeat Zimo by joining forces, it would be an unfair victory. They could not afford to lose face like this. At that moment, all the cultivators were stunned by Zimo's sharp methods and did not dare to advance. Jian Wuzong sneered and finally stood out. Perfected Lord Panglong smiled when he saw that. You want to challenge us? The test has just begun. Jian Wuzong, don't go. Hang Qiuyu frowned and reminded with a voice transmission. Humph. Jian Wuzong harumphed and asked instead, why? Are you going to help me retrieve the startling dermic sword, senior brother? There's no hurry. Hang Qiuyu said in a deep voice, this person's background. Fu. Before Hang Qiuyu could finish, he was interrupted by Jian Wuzong's cold laughter. Senior brother, I think you just want to stand by and watch me make a fool of myself. I'll take back the sword that I lost personally. It's none of your business. Jian Wuzong said coldly and walked towards Zimo with his sword in hand. Prepare to attack and kill that person at all costs. Yi Tiancheng sent a voice transmission expressionlessly. The 8 maidservants beside him nodded. The third on the phenomenon ranking, Jian Wuzong, is here to take revenge for his previous humiliation. Last time, Jian Wuzong did not display his true strength without a sword in his hands. This is the only way to see who's stronger. Amidst the discussions of the crowd, Jian Wuzong walked towards Zimo step by step. He wielded his sword casually and sparks flashed as the tip of his sword sliced across the ground. Although Jian Wuzong looked lazy and was full of openings, no one dared to underestimate him. That was because no one knew when he would strike. When he struck, it would definitely be an attack that could shock the heavens. The distance between the two of them narrowed constantly. One was passive while the other was active. The air seemed to have frozen and was suffocating. All of a sudden, a breathtaking sword beam appeared and pierced Zimo's throat, arriving instantly. It was like lightning that tore through the night sky. It was too fast. That was the only thought in everyone's minds. Many paragons instinctively thought that if they were in the same position, they would not be able to react to that sword. Even Dao Lord Lan Yu's eyes lit up. As expected of third on the phenomenon ranking, there were probably less than 10 nascent souls present who could defend against that single slash. At the same time, 8 figures beside Yi Tiancheng moved. Yi played the flute. The bitter sound of the flute sounded mournful and unsettling. Yi Si scattered flowers. The petals fell with a chilling killing intent. Yi Wu fanned her folding fan. The wind howled and sand flew everywhere. The figures of the other maidservants flashed and they took out their dermic weapons, charging forward with daggers, needles and sabers. The timing of the 8 maidservants was perfect. They sealed off all of Zimo's escape routes. There was no way to retreat. At that moment, Jian Wuzong had just attacked. It was an attack that everyone would have to focus on, as though they were approaching an abyss. Nobody could afford to be distracted. At the same time, the attack of the 8 maidservants was equivalent to pushing Zimo into the abyss. Perfected Lord Pang Lan retracted his smile. If he was merely facing Jian Wuzong's attack, he would be able to defend. However, even he might not be able to escape unscathed from this encirclement. Chapter 951. Sword Snatching, Counterattack. Chapter 951. Sword Snatching, Counterattack. Lang Ro, Little Fatty and the others turned nervous. After all, they had not seen Zimo for 100 years and they did not know how strong he was right now. Lang Ro looked at the startling dermic sword in her hands and suddenly felt regret. If she had returned the connate perfected Lord dermic weapon to Zimo earlier on, it might have been of some use at this critical juncture. But now, Zimo was standing on the spot, unarmed and fighting with his bare hands. Jian Wuzong's sword was already at his throat. At this distance, it was already too late for Zimo to retrieve his dermic weapon from his storage bag. Furthermore, the 8 maidservants of Yi Tiancheng had already surrounded him and sealed off all his escape routes. Arrogant fellow, let's see where you can hide, Yi Jiu said hatefully with a cold gaze. A look of joy flashed through Jian Wuzong's eyes as well. He could almost see Zimo's throat being pierced by his sword the next moment. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, Zimo reared his head and roared with laughter that was deafening. Jian Wuzong frowned slightly. He had suddenly noticed that even in the face of such an encirclement, Zimo's eyes were filled with mockery instead of panic. Thereafter, Zimo said indifferently, "If I can snatch your sword once, I can do it again." He was the strongest monster incarnate in history. He had no intention of dodging attacks as such. There was no need for it either. Before he finished his sentence, Zimo suddenly struck. His entire arm went limp and he flung it out with a thud, like the trunk of a primordial divine elephant against the incoming sword. A coil and a tremble. Ah! Jian Wuzong exclaimed. He sensed an extremely terrifying power that twisted and trembled before erupting. His palm could not hold the sword at all. The sword vibrated and his palm was torn apart. Blood oozed from the muscles on his arm. In a flash, the sword flew out of his hands and was snatched away by Zimo. Nobody could tell what happened the moment the two of them exchanged blows. Even Jian Wuzong himself could not see clearly either. Everyone only knew that the sword had changed owners in the blink of an eye. No one could understand the fear in Jian Wuzong's heart right now. Although his current sword was not a connate perfected Lord dermic weapon, it was still a perfect dermic weapon that was extremely sharp and could slice through metal like mud. He truly could not imagine that someone of the same cultivation realm could snatch his sword bare-handed. Such methods and powerful physique were way beyond his understanding. At that moment, there was only a single thought in Jian Wuzong's mind. Run! With his sword snatched away, Jian Wuzong did not hesitate and burst in retreat. Immediately after, he felt an extremely terrifying aura that caused his scalp to tingle. Zimo extended his left hand and closed two fingers together like a sword, slashing in his direction casually. Chi! A sword chi burst forth from Zimo's fingertip. It was a blinding white. In that instant, the entire world shook and the weather changed. Heaven-slaying sword art. The sword snatching and counterattack happened at almost the same time. Even the cultivators in the entire mystic courtyard felt a chilling killing intent, let alone Jian Wuzong. Pest! The crowd gasped. What a terrifying sword chi! Apart from sword sect, was there another sword art in Tianhuang mainland that was this terrifying? I know! Cheng Peng of Heavenly Dipper sect was crippled by that sword chi. Someone exclaimed. Initially, Dao Lord Panglan had the thought of watching a show. However, after the sword chi burst forth, he felt a chill run down his spine. Instinctively, he sat upright with a grim expression. Dao Lord Lan Yu's expression changed slightly as her eyes narrowed. She was a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord and her cultivation realm far surpassed everyone else's. She could sense everything clearly. It was clear that Mo Ling had yet to unleash the true might of the sword chi. Even so, it was enough to destroy everything. Compared to this sword chi, Jian Wuzong's attack earlier paled in comparison, as though he was a kid that was waving a sword wildly. The cultivators at the side felt their hearts skip a beat. It was easy to imagine the current situation of Jian Wuzong. It was as though he could smell death. Jian Wuzong's pupils constricted as he conjured hand seals repeatedly. Dermic powers surged and a gigantic dermic power sword was formed between his palms. Slay! With a furious roar, he waved his dermic power sword and slashed viciously at the incoming sword chi. Shing! There was a soft sound. It was almost inaudible. The dermic power sword in Jian Wuzong's hands was sliced into two by the thin white sword chi and dissipated instantly. However, the sword chi did not pause at all and stabbed towards Jian Wuzong's chest. A dermic art of sword sect could not defend against the sword chi at all. Jian Wuzong had a ferocious expression and green veins popped out on his neck, his eyes filled with indignance. Although the sword chi might not be able to kill him, it would definitely destroy his body once it entered his body. He had never seen such a terrifying sword chi even back in sword sect. I'm indignant. Jian Wuzong let out his final roar. All of a sudden, just as Jian Wuzong was about to give up, a massive tug on his arm pulled him back. Jian Wuzong's figure floated and he fell towards the front of sword sect. In the blink of an eye, he caught sight of a familiar figure who shielded him. Senior brother. Jian Wuzong jolted. Hang Qiuyu chose to stand out when he was on the brink of death. Senior brother, help me kill him. Jian Wuzong shouted through gritted teeth. Hang Qiuyu did not reply. He could not speak either. When he stood in front of the sword chi properly, Hang Qiuyu felt the fear full and proper. Unknowingly, beads of sweat appeared on his face. Buzz! Hang Qiuyu struck. A breathtaking sword beam appeared. 6 dermic patterns, a connate perfected Lord dermic weapon. Wherever the sword beam passed, all life in the void seemed to be sucked away by it. Lifeless sword art. That sword art was a secret skill that was deduced by the sword sect's founder master through one of the 3 ancient sword arts and possessed shocking might. Clang! The sword chi and sword tip collided. Endless killing intent filled the air. The void where they collided seemed to be sliced into pieces. Hang Qiuyu shuddered and staggered 3 steps back. With every step, his feet sank deeply into the ground, leaving a clear footprint. The terrifying sword chi finally dissipated. However, Hang Qiuyu's arm that was gripping his sword was still trembling uncontrollably. Even with his connate dermic weapon and the lifeless sword art, he could barely defend against the sword chi. What was the origin of that sword chi? What scared Hang Qiuyu even more was not the sword chi. It was the person who released the sword chi. After releasing that sword chi, Mo Ling turned around and faced the 8 maidservants of Yi Tiancheng without turning back. He did not even look at them once. Nobody could match his confidence. The true reason why Hang Qiuyu's heart sank was because of that person's identity.
Chapter 952. Who are you? Chapter 952. Who are you? On the battlefield. It only took a single moment for Zimo to snatch the sword and release the heaven-slaying sword art. At the same time, the attacks of the 8 maidservants had already arrived. The first to arrive was Yi's flute. The mournful sound of the flute could disrupt the minds of cultivators and even affect their essence spirits. However, it was a pity that Zimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, and his 7 orifices were incomparably strong. The sound of the flute could not affect his mind at all. As for affecting his essence spirit, that was even more impossible. The sound of the flute could not even penetrate the layer of defense set up by the Ming Wang prayer beads. Immediately after, a violent gust of wind swept over. If it was a cultivator with a weaker physique, they would have been swept up by the gust of wind or staggered and swayed. However, it was a pity that Zimo's physique was strong and he stood firmly on the ground as though he was rooted. Yi's petals flew over with the wind. The other 5 maidservants had also closed in. Right then, Zimo had just snatched the sword from Jian Wuzong's hands. Turning around, he twisted his wrist and the sword vibrated. He snatched the sword, counterattacked and spun to slash with the sword in one single motion. Whoosh! Waving the sword in his hand, Zimo slashed viciously at the void before him. The sword slashed down and a tsunami sound could be heard. Right after, a boundless ocean seemed to appear before the eyes of many cultivators. At the center of the sea, waves surged and spun endlessly, forming a gigantic vortex that rumbled with a terrifying might. The entire space seemed to have been distorted by the terrifying vortex. Using his sword as a saber, Zimo released Vortex of the Sea Calming Manual. Pest! What a strong sword intent! What sort of sword technique is this? It seems to be lacking in the sharpness of the Tao of the sword. Instead, it seems more dignified? A wave of shock and astonishment could be heard from the crowd. There were 3 levels to sword Tao. Technique, force and intent. Sword techniques were the most superficial and sword forces required one to comprehend some of the aura of the sword techniques. Before the nascent soul realm, cultivators could at most comprehend the level of force. That was because the final layer of sword intent required the essence spirit to channel dermic powers and evolve the intent of the technique. The might of a top-notch sword intent was not weaker than dermic arts. Furthermore, be it sword or saber intent, the might of the sword technique would increase immensely after it was released and could affect a cultivator's mind. Right now, it was as though many cultivators were witnessing a massive ocean vortex. When he saw that, Hang Qiuyu's eyes widened and he shuddered. As though he thought of something, a look of realization flashed through his eyes, followed by shock and finally fear. Sword intent. Listening to the discussions in the crowd, Hang Qiuyu wanted to laugh but could not. The first stance of the Sea Calming Manual focused on defense. Space distorted with a single slash. Although Zimo slashed out the saber technique with a sword, the intent was the same and the power was shocking. The incoming petals were sucked into the vortex, as though they had lost their direction and were flowing along with the current. The other 5 maidservants had just charged forward when their movement techniques came to a stop and they were almost dragged away. Yi Jiu's gaze was sinister as she charged forward despite the pressure and waved her hand. A dense mass of silver needles burst forth from her sleeves. Before they even arrived, they emitted a pungent stench. Poison. It was a familiar move that was identical to the methods of poison sect cultivators. Sneering internally, Zimo took a deep breath of air. Just as the poison needles were about to reach his face, he suddenly opened his mouth and roared. Kill! Thunderclap kill! Boom! The voice sounded like thunder in the ears of the 8 maidservants. The first to suffer was Yi, who played the flute. The sound of the flute was interrupted instantly. Yi grunted and her face turned pale instantly. Cracks appeared on her flute. It was clearly crippled. Furthermore, Zimo's roar was released with the power of his lungs and a massive air current gushed out from his mouth. The poison needles were blown away by Zimo's breath. Immediately after, a series of peerless sword beams followed. Ripples seemed to ripple through the void towards Yi Er, Yi San and the other maidservants. Sea Calming Manual. Ripple stance. Similarly,
He released his saber intent with his sword. The sword beam was cold as it sliced through Yi Er and Yi San's throats. Both of their minds went blank from the shock of thunderclap kill and were stunned on the spot. By the time they came to their senses, they found themselves spinning and rising into the air. They could see their own corpses. Their corpses were headless. 2 gigantic heads were beheaded by Su Zimo. Yi Ba and Yi Jiu were the closest to Su Zimo. The impact of thunderclap kill was the strongest as well. Blood oozed from their nostrils, ears, mouths and eyes. They were bleeding from all orifices. The 2 of them fell stiffly to the ground and 2 more heads flew up before they could even touch the ground. In the blink of an eye, Yi Lu was the only one left among the 5 people who had rushed forward. Her body was the strongest among the 5 of them, and that was the reason why she was able to hold out for so long. You! However, the moment she said a single word, Su Zimo had already walked over and slashed with his sword without giving her any chance. Swoosh! That sword strike created a tsunami. Yi Lu was sent flying by the sword strike the moment she raised her curved saber. Su Zimo severed her head casually. Of the 8 maidservants, only 3 remained. The 3 of you don't leave either. Su Zimo advanced with his sword, and wherever his sword passed, ripples would appear. The 3 of them were engulfed by the ripples, and it was impossible for them to escape. Cling! Clang! Both parties had only exchanged 3 to 4 blows. 3 heads that were spewing blood flew into the air and fell into the dust. There were many nascent souls that attacked Su Zimo, but the 8 maidservants suffered the most tragic outcome. It was like karma. Initially, it was one of the maidservants who took action and beheaded a nascent soul. She was unreasonable and no one dared to reply. But now, their fates had turned out like this. It said that sword cultivators are ruthless and decisive in killing. Now that I'm seeing it personally, they truly live up to their reputation. That Mo Ling is way too ruthless. He doesn't know how to be tender towards women at all. The crowd was speechless. Who are you? Right then, a voice sounded from the side, seemingly questioning but suppressing something. The person's voice was quivering. Hang Qiuyu glared at Su Zimo fixedly, and his arm that was gripping his sword trembled slightly as he asked again, "Who are you?" He could tell that it was not sword intent but saber intent. Apart from the successor of Divine Phoenix Island, there was only a single person in Tianhuang mainland who knew about that saber intent. "Patron, may I know who taught you the Daming True Sutra? Please reply." Void reversion monks of wisdom, hollow and formless monasteries stood out at the same time and asked loudly with unfriendly expressions. "Fu." Suddenly, Yi Tiancheng laughed and said darkly, "Do you think that you can fool everyone by using a sword as a saber and displaying saber intent?" He was the number 1 of the phenomenon ranking, the number 1 perfected lord of the Middle Continent. Naturally, Su Zimo's methods could not be hidden from him. Right then, Dao Lord Lan Yu stood up slowly and a suppressive might descended. "You've hidden your true appearance. Who are you exactly? How dare you disguise yourself at the Thousand Crane Tea Party?" Chapter 953. My name is Su Zimo. Chapter 953. My name is Su Zimo. The crowd was stunned. Everyone from 100 Refinement sect was stunned on the spot as well. Yi Tiancheng, Hang Qiuyu and the monks of the Buddhist sects interrogated Su Zimo aggressively. Right now, even Dao Lord Lan Yu stood out. Furthermore, Dao Lord Lan Yu had an unfriendly expression. It was clear that she was truly enraged. Nangong Ling and the other 2 exchanged confused glances. Wasn't that Little Granduncle Master's original appearance? Little Granduncle Master hid his identity. What was his original identity and why did he have to hide? Lang Ro, Little Fatty and the others looked nervous. At that moment, everyone's gazes were focused on the green-robed man in the center of the battlefield. Su Zimo smiled calmly and indifferently. He had expected this. At this point, there was no longer a need to hide. Su Zimo's body crackled and his facial muscles twitched. In the blink of an eye, his appearance changed drastically and he turned into a cultivator with delicate features. His black hair swayed and his green robes fluttered. His eyes were deep and his body exuded an aura that was so strong that it could make one shudder. Hang Qiuyu's heart skipped a beat and he took half a step back instinctively. His eyes were filled with fear and his breathing quickened. Fairy Luo Shui of Snowdrift Valley jolted upright and her eyes lit up. Ah! Tang Yu of Elixir Yang sect exclaimed softly and covered her mouth hurriedly with joy in her eyes. Wow! Ru Xian exclaimed and chuckled. So, little Granduncle Master actually looks like this. He's quite handsome. Yi Tiancheng, perfected Lord Panglan and the others had never seen Su Zimo before and naturally had no reaction. However, there was an unusual commotion in the crowd. It's him. He's still alive. Unknowingly, 100 years have passed since that incident. Dao Lord Lan Yu frowned. It was clear that many of the cultivators present recognized this person. However, their voices were suppressed and they did not even mention his name. It was as though that name had become a taboo. Dao Lord Lan Yu asked once more, "Who are you?" "My name is Su Zimo." Su Zimo surveyed his surroundings calmly and said in a slow manner. Instantly, the entire mystic courtyard turned silent and one could hear a pin drop. That name seemed to possess an invisible power that could deter all the cultivators from speaking, breathing or acting rashly. Su Zimo was the number one of the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago, an unprecedented monster incarnate. He had once suppressed the paragons of the various major sects in the two ancient battlefields and was invincible among his peers. This man has never suffered a defeat. He created an unprecedented golden core phenomenon and left his name on the ancient phenomenon stele. Many cultivators recalled the various legends of that name. Of course, the most terrifying legends were related to the catastrophe of the paragons that broke out in Myriad Phenomenon City during the battle for the phenomenon ranking 100 years ago. Legend has it that during that catastrophe, 2 different foreign races descended and massacred the city. Corpses were strewn everywhere and blood flowed like rivers. Countless paragons were killed. More than half of the paragons on the phenomenon ranking were dead. Thankfully, this person protected the last bit of dignity of the human race and fought a bloody battle to the death. In a situation where he was almost exhausted, he managed to kill off both foreign races. Of course, the major sects and factions forbade the details of the matter to be spread later on, and many surviving cultivators were extremely secretive about it as well. It became a taboo. As time passed by, many details were drowned in the river of time. That matter eventually became a legend. Now that 100 years had passed, there were no longer many people who thought of it to be true. As for the younger generation, they even treated it as a joke and never took it seriously. Ignoring everyone else, Nangongling, Ru Xian and the others of 100 Refinement sect were already filled with disdain towards Su Zimo during their casual chat. However, many of the cultivators present were lucky survivors who were once personally involved. Hang Qiuyu was. It was the same for Fairy Luo Shui. There were others. Almost all the cultivators who survived the calamity advanced to the nascent soul realm and became paragons that were eligible to participate in this event. In the hearts of these paragons, that name was invincible and taboo. That was the true number one of the phenomenon ranking. Now that this person was at the nascent soul realm, he was the number one perfected lord. He was not the number one perfected lord of Middle Continent, but the number one perfected lord of Tianhuang mainland. Little Granduncle Master. He's Su Zimo? Ru Xian widened her mouth in disbelief. Could the legend back then be true? Nangongling murmured softly, unable to recover from the shock. Lu Hanyen had a complicated expression. She had long noticed that something was amiss with Su Zimo. However, she had not expected their Granduncle Master to have such a powerful background. There seemed to be an explanation for everything at this moment. Su Zimo was most likely the only person who could possess the boldness to holler at Yi Tiancheng to get down. Su Zimo was the only one who could take down Jian Wuzong, who was ranked 3rd on the phenomenon ranking so badly that the latter could not even withdraw his sword. Su Zimo was the only one who could take on all the paragons present single-handedly. No wonder. Lu Hanyen looked towards Lang Rou and the others who were not far away. She finally understood why Su Zimo wanted to stand out and help Lang Rou and the others to withstand the massive pressure from Yi Tiancheng and Dao Lord Lan Yu. Dao Lord Lan Yu narrowed her eyes with a conflicted expression. Given her status, She naturally knew everything that happened in Myriad Phenomenon City 100 years ago. No matter what, Thousand Crane sect was indebted to Zimo for the battle 100 years ago. Or rather, all the sects and paragons that survived 100 years ago owed Zimo a huge favor. However, Zimo's situation was complicated. This man had already offended many super sects, Glass Palace, Chaos Essence Sect and Wind Thunder Palace. All of them wanted to kill him. Furthermore, that person cultivated a demon cultivation technique. Up till this point, nobody knew if he was a human or demon. As the master of Thousand Crane sect, Tao Lord Lan Yu was hesitant about how to deal with this person. There was no justice in killing him. However, if he was not killed, it would be equivalent to offending a few super sects. Instantly, Tao Lord Lan Yu fell silent as well. This was an unprecedentedly strange scene. The name shocked the entire mystic courtyard into silence. Senior brother, what are you waiting for? Go up and kill this man to help me wash away my shame. Unable to hold it in, Jian Wuzong pushed Hang Qiuyu. Hang Qiuyu glared at Zimo with a dark expression without saying anything. Jian Wuzong grit his teeth and said hatefully, "That sword art of his can't be released a second time within a short period of time. Senior brother, help me kill him." Shut up. Hang Qiuyu spun around and gave Jian Wuzong a tight slap. Jian Wuzong was stunned from the blow. With a cold gaze, Hang Qiuyu glared at Jian Wuzong and ordered coldly, "Scram! Don't embarrass yourself here. Do you know who he is? Senior brother, are you afraid?" Jian Wuzong burst into laughter. What happened 100 years ago was merely a baseless rumor. To think that you would be frightened by someone whose name has been exaggerated. Ha ha ha. Rumor. Hang Qiuyu replied coldly. Everything was true. How do you know? You didn't see it with your own eyes. Jian Wuzong could not continue. He suddenly recalled that Hang Qiuyu was ranked 8th on the Phenomenon ranking 100 years ago and had personally experienced everything in Myriad Phenomenon City. Chapter 954. You're not allowed to use it unless I allow it. Chapter 954. You're not allowed to use it unless I allow it. Hang Qiuyu looked at Zimo, who was not far away, with a conflicted expression. Although they had only exchanged half a move, he knew that the difference between them was even greater than before. At that moment, when the name Zimo was mentioned, Hang Qiuyu realized that did not even possess the courage to attack this man any longer. The Void Reversion of Sword sect narrowed his eyes and asked with a cold glint, "Is he really as strong as the rumors say?" "Yes." Hang Qiuyu replied firmly without hesitation. "Foo-foo." The Void Reversion of Sword sect sneered. "No matter what, he's only the top of the Phenomenon ranking. There are 2 people at the top of the Phenomenon rankings here and he doesn't have any extra limbs." Hang Qiuyu shook his head. There have been many people who were at the top of the Phenomenon rankings in history, but he's different. "Foo-foo, what difference can there be?" The Void Reversion of Sword sect sneered once more. "What are you doing?" Turning around, Hang Qiuyu asked with a frown. The Void Reversion of Sword sect said coldly, "I heard that he's a demon. Since he's a demon, we'll naturally kill him with all our might. There's no need for any morals." Hang Qiuyu said sternly, "I advise you not to harbor any designs on him." Hang Qiuyu was truly advising from the bottom of his heart. Without experiencing the catastrophe of Myriad Phenomenon City personally, no one would be able to understand how terrifying this green-robed scholar was. No matter how strong he is, can he defeat someone at the Void Reversion realm and defend against my sword? The Void Reversion of Sword sect pursed his lips. "To think that you're truly afraid," as Jian Wuzong said. "Hang Qiuyu, you've truly disappointed me." "I admit I'm scared." Without hiding anything, Hang Qiuyu paused for a moment before changing the topic. "But even if I'm not afraid, I won't attack him. Anyone from Sword sect can attack him except me. 100 years ago, I owed him my life." The Void Reversion of Sword sect harumphed and remained silent. Snowdrift Valley's Lingbai glared at Zimo and licked his lips, looking excited and eager. Not every paragon would feel fear upon hearing that name. Although Lingbai was ranked 20th on the Phenomenon ranking, He had obtained a great opportunity after entering the nascent soul realm and believed that he was not weaker than other nascent soul paragons. He came to the Thousand Crane Tea Party this time round with the intention of shocking everyone present with his prowess. Right then, Fairy Luo Xue, the void reversion of Snowdrift Valley, stood out and cupped her fists towards Su Zimo with a smile. It's been 100 years since we parted in Myriad Phenomenon City. Do you still remember me, Brother Su? How can I forget the grace of a fairy? Su Zimo smiled as well. Back in Myriad Phenomenon City, of the 13 nascent souls, only 3 chose not to escape and Fairy Luo Xue was one of them. Fairy Luo Xue also knew that it was not suitable for them to catch up at this moment. She merely exchanged some pleasantries before retreating. Snowdrift Valley disciples, listen up. Fairy Luo Xue said slowly, it's fine if you want to fight, but no one is allowed to attack Su Zimo.
Ha! Why?
Ling Bai was indignant and asked with a frown. Fairy Luo Xue said indifferently, continue watching and you'll find out, I won't hurt you guys. Since he is here now, unless a Dharma characteristic shows up at the Thousand Crane Tea Party, no one else will be a threat to him. At the mention of Su Zimo's name, some were wary, some were fearful but others were indifferent. Perfected Lord Panglon was one of them. He was at the top of the phenomenon ranking 400 years ago and was half a step into the void reversion realm. He was confident that he would be able to drink the final cup of supreme-grade mystic tea. To be fair, because of some personal trump cards, he was not even bothered by Yi Tiancheng. All these years, he had been in seclusion. He had never heard of the apocalyptic battle, much less the Paragon catastrophe, 100 years ago and was not fearful at all. Top of the phenomenon ranking. Perfected Lord Panglon smiled indifferently. Who isn't one? He was older and was more mature than the other nascent soul paragons. He had no intention of attacking. The situation before him was clear. Su Zimo was bound to fight with Yi Tiancheng. All he had to do was watch from the sidelines and reap the rewards. Well. Yi Tiancheng finally moved. Rising slowly from his throne, he looked at Su Zimo who was not far away and grinned. The purpose for my marriage proposal this time round was merely to serve as a bait. Initially, I thought that I would be able to fish out some small fishes. To think that I would be able to fish out a huge catch. At this point, Yi Tiancheng no longer concealed the purpose of the marriage proposal. Lang Ro turned to look at Dao Lord Lan Yu. Dao Lord Lan Yu had an ugly expression but she did not say anything nor did she have any intention of apologizing to Lang Ro. As the master of a sect and Lang Ro's master, she would definitely not bow down in front of everyone despite knowing that she was in the wrong. To me, you're also bait. Su Zimo replied indifferently. Di-Yin has escaped a calamity by not appearing today. I'm going to use you to bait him out.
Foo.
Yi Tiancheng laughed, his eyes filled with mockery as he shook his head. Su Zimo, oh Su Zimo, I admit that you're indeed qualified to challenge me. However, if you want to challenge senior brother Di-Yin, you're overestimating yourself. The difference between the two of you is like heaven and earth. You've got 2 things wrong. Su Zimo extended his finger and shook it gently. First, I'm not the one challenging you. You're the one challenging me. Who were you even when I became famous? I'm also the top of the phenomenon ranking. Yi Tiancheng was too young and the slightest provocation was enough to incur his wrath. Top of the phenomenon ranking. Su Zimo smiled gently. That's because I was not around. If I were, I would wipe you from the phenomenon ranking. Wipe. He spoke as though he was wiping away dust with ease. Second. Su Zimo continued. There is indeed a gap between Di-Yin and me. 100 years ago, Di-Yin was chased by me and fled in a sorry state, discarding all his equipment. He did not even dare to return to Myriad Phenomenon City. The difference between us is truly like heaven and earth. Ha. It's all from 100 years ago. Who knows if it's true or not? Yi Tiancheng laughed sinisterly. Su Zimo, you're old and you can only reminisce about the past. The era that belongs to you is already over. Now that 100 years have passed, it's my era. I'm the #1 perfected lord. That's where you're wrong again. Su Zimo shook his head. 100 years later, since I'm back, I'm now the #1 perfected lord. That title? You're not allowed to use it unless I allow it. You're not allowed to use it unless I allow it. His words were extremely domineering and an invisible aura crushed over, causing Yi Tiancheng to feel a sense of pressure. And if I want to use it? Yi Tiancheng glared at Su Zimo menacingly and said word by word. Su Zimo's gaze was sharp as a knife as he said slowly, I'll kill you if you dare taint that title. Chapter 955. Battle Erupts. Chapter 955. Battle Erupts. Kill me? Yi Tiancheng smiled sinisterly and turned to look at Dao Lord Lan Yu, who was not far away. He said coldly, Today is a personal feud between Chaos Essence Sect and this person. It's not within the scope of the Paragon battle. Dao Lord Lan Yu, please don't interfere. In other words, the two of them were going to fight to the death. Dao, being Chi Guy of Zephyr Thunder Palace, suddenly stood up and said, Everyone, don't forget that we don't know if this lad is a human or a demon. Initially, Zephyr Thunder Palace stood by idly. Now that Su Zimo's true identity was exposed, there was no way they would let him off. Back in Myriad Phenomenon City, the Paragon of Zephyr Thunder Palace died in Night Spirit's hands. In order to snatch the Purple Thunder Manual, perfected Lord Tianming of Zephyr Thunder Palace was turned into a puddle of blood by Su Zimo's demonic technique, and his body and spirit were destroyed. Be it for revenge or for the Purple Thunder Manual, Zephyr Thunder Hall naturally could not sit still after seeing Su Zimo reappear. The Void Reversion of Hellfire Hall said hatefully, If he was a demon, he sure is evil, since he infiltrated the Thousand Crane Tea Party and schemed for the supreme grade mystic tea while causing internal strife between the major sections. Sect Master Lan Yu, you should kill right away as a warning to others. Ming Han's throat was crushed by Su Zimo and his essence spirit was damaged. Even if he woke up, it would be difficult for him to regain his former glory. Hellfire Hall hated Su Zimo to the core. That's right. The Void Reversion of Sword Sect harumphed. I even heard that this lad is sworn siblings with a bunch of demons. If he's not a demon, what is he? The super sects expressed their stance one after another. Dao Lord Lan Yu took a deep breath and had no choice but to step forward. Slapping her storage bag, she took out a shining mirror and threw it gently into the air, pointing to it with her finger. A stream of dermic power surged within. Whoosh! The mirror shone brightly and a gigantic beam of light landed on Su Zimo. Demon Revealing Mirror. The Demon Revealing Mirror was a dermic treasure specially created by the Weapon Emperor of the Ancient Era to counter demons. It had no effect on cultivators but was extremely harmful to demons. Legend has it that the true Demon Revealing Mirror could destroy any demon with a single beam of light. It was extremely terrifying. The Demon Revealing Mirrors later on were all replicas. Although they were not as powerful as the original Demon Revealing Mirror, they still had clear effects on demons. Demons had nowhere to hide under the illumination of the Demon Revealing Mirror and would reveal their true forms. Furthermore, their essence spirit and dermic powers would be suppressed. Back in the intermediate ancient battlefield, Glass Palace relied on a few Demon Revealing Mirrors to set up a formation that trapped Su Zimo on the spot. Right now, the mirror in Dao Lord Lan Yu's hands was a replica of the Demon Revealing Mirror. Even so, the Demon Revealing Mirror was a Dao Lord dermic weapon and had an absolute suppressive effect on a nascent soul demon. Lang Ro, Little Fatty and the others instantly became nervous. However, they soon realized that there was no need for that. Against the light of the Demon Revealing Mirror, Su Zimo stood with his hands behind his back, looking indifferent and unaffected. He did not look like a demon being suppressed at all. After entering Nascent Soul Realm, Su Zimo cultivated two essence spirits. Right now, the black-haired essence spirit was in his consciousness. This was an essence spirit condensed from the top cultivation techniques of the human race, the immortal and Buddhist sections. It was extremely pure and would not be affected at all. As for the scarlet-haired spirit, it was hidden in the depths of his consciousness and could not be detected unless someone sent their spirit consciousness in. Upon seeing that, everyone from Zephyr Thunder Hall and Chaos Essence Sect frowned. Could the rumors be fake? Or could it be that this person had some tricks that he could even hide from the Demon Revealing Mirror? Expressionlessly, Dao Lord Lan Yu put away the Demon Revealing Mirror and waved her hand. Settle your grudges yourselves. Boom! Before the sentence was finished, Yi Tiancheng had already leaped up from his throne. His glabella shone as he conjured hand seals repeatedly and shouted, "Firmament art!" Dermic powers were like silk on the fingertips of Yi Tiancheng, weaving a boundless firmament that shrouded toward Zimo. Firmament art was a top-grade dermic art of Chaos Essence sect. The firmaments covered the entire world. Under the envelopment of the firmaments, all living beings would be suppressed. An unimaginable pressure crushed down, as though the entire sky had collapsed and covered the skies. How was that a fight against a human? It was a fight against the heavens and skies. It was not something that human strength could compare against. This is way too scary. Sensing the dermic powers surging in the battlefield, the crowd's expressions changed and they exclaimed softly. In the fight earlier on, many nascent soul paragons released their dermic arts. However, they were nothing but child's play compared to this dermic art. As expected of Yi Tiancheng. Nangong Ling murmured with a shocked expression, to be able to cultivate such immense dermic powers at early-stage nascent soul, how strong will he be at late-stage or perfected nascent soul? Ru Xian and the others looked worried as well. Even though they were not involved, they still felt immense pressure. It was hard to imagine how Zimo, who was at the center of the battlefield, would react to the firmament art. Zimo did not move. He merely stood on the spot with his hands behind his back and raised his head slightly, looking at the descending firmament with disdain. He could tell that the dermic art was extremely powerful. However, Yi Tiancheng was far from being able to unleash the power of that dermic art. Firmament art. Zimo smiled gently. With a bang, his feet landed on the ground and he rose from the ground, punching towards the firmaments that were crushing down. The crowd burst into an uproar upon the sight of that. Against that dermic art, Zimo did not use any dermic weapons, dermic arts or secret skills. Instead, he chose to fight it with his body. A tiny figure rose against the shroud of the massive firmaments. It looked like a moth flying into flames. However, the collision between the two was earth-shaking. Boom! Zimo's fist collided heavily against the descending firmament. Instantly the world froze. That scene seemed to have frozen. Beneath the firmament, a seemingly tiny figure reached out with a fist as though it wanted to tear through the firmaments and penetrate the world. Crack, crack, crack. Cracks sounded. Under the watchful gazes of countless people, cracks appeared in the firmaments one after another, growing larger and spreading. In the blink of an eye, the entire sky was filled. Shattered. The firmaments shattered. That extremely domineering firmament art was shattered by a single punch from Zimo. What a terrifying physique. That person's physique is probably not weaker than divine weapons. A series of exclamations came from the crowd. Well, well, well. Yi Tiancheng reared his head in laughter without any fear in his eyes. Zimo, you've truly not disappointed me. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Swinging his robes, Yi Tiancheng sent a series of cold flashes towards Zimo at an extremely fast speed. 49 flying swords tore through the air with sword chi. Ah, it's an entire set of flying swords. Suddenly, the void reversion of ancient array sect said, I remember now. The sect master of Chaos Essence sect paid a visit 10 years ago. This set of flying swords was made personally for him by our sect master. To think that this set of flying swords would be in the hands of Yi Tiancheng. Could it be? Chapter 956, Clash of Phenomenons. Chapter 956, Clash of Phenomenons. Sword Formation Master. Nobody expected Yi Tiancheng to be one of the few extremely rare sword formation masters in the cultivation world. The more flying swords required to create a sword formation, the harder it would be to control the formation and the more power it would possess. Now that Yi Tiancheng had released 49 flying swords and all of them were perfect-grade perfected Lord Dermic weapons, the lethality of this sword formation was unimaginable. Chaos Essence Void Sword Formation. Yi Tiancheng controlled the 49 flying swords and drew a series of trajectories in midair, interweaving and forming formation patterns. Sweeping his gaze across Yi Tiancheng's flying swords, Zimo sneered and slapped his storage bag, pulling out a grayish-black mountain. One of the 7 unique treasures, the Mystic Magnet Mountain. Dermic powers surged within Zimo's body, and he injected it into the Mystic Magnet Mountain before flinging it into the air. The Mystic Magnet Mountain expanded against the wind and crushed down towards the 49 flying swords. Yi Tiancheng's expression changed slightly. Just as the Chaos Essence Void Sword formation was about to be formed, he did not expect his flying swords to move uncontrollably towards the Mystic Magnet Mountain after it descended. Formations would collapse instantly if there was a slightest mistake in their patterns. What more, the 49 flying swords were all completely out of control at this moment. Stabilize! Yi Tiancheng released his massive spirit consciousness in an attempt to control the 49 flying swords. However, the Mystic Magnet Mountain had already descended. Boom! With a loud bang, all 49 flying swords were suppressed beneath the Mystic Magnet Mountain. Imperial Void Seal Technique. Yi Tiancheng's reaction was extremely fast as he conjured hand seals repeatedly and cast them onto the Mystic Magnet Mountain. The dermic seal shone with a mysterious light and almost sealed the power of the Mystic Magnet Mountain. Clang! Clang! The 49 flying swords danced beneath the mountain peak, trying to break free. Humph! Zimo sneered and his eyes flashed with lightning. He conjured hand seals rapidly and rumbling sounds echoed from his body. Electric arcs even flashed on his body. His black hair danced and purple lightning filled the air. Dark clouds surged and covered the skies. Standing in midair, Zimo seemed as though he was in a sea of thunder and lightning with a majestic aura. Purple thunderstorm. Zimo hollered and pointed forward. Streaks of purple thunderbolt rained down from the dark clouds, connecting the firmaments to the earth. They weaved endlessly to form a terrifying purple thunderstorm. It's the Purple Thunder Manual. Dao being Qi Guy of Zephyr Thunder Palace grit his teeth with greed in his eyes. There was a cultivation technique in Zephyr Thunder Hall called the Green Thunder Manual. Be it perfected Lord Tianming of Wind Thunder Palace or Dao being Qi Guy, both of them were bent on getting back the Purple Thunder Manual because the combination of these two dermic arts was the top cultivation technique, the Void Thunder Manual. Legend has it that when these two cultivation techniques were combined into one, they could create an Essence Spirit secret skill with shocking might. If I can seize this opportunity to get my hands on the Purple Thunder Manual, I can fuse these two cultivation techniques first. Dao being Qi Guy's eyes shone with excitement. This was an opportunity that belonged to him. There was no way he could let this slip. On the battlefield, the purple thunderstorm descended as though it wanted to destroy the world. The storm shrouded the Mystic Magnet Mountain and purple lightning flickered, destroying the seal left behind by Yi Tiancheng's Imperial Void Seal technique swiftly. The 49 flying swords were suppressed by the Mystic Magnet Mountain once more. Not only that, the purple thunderstorm was already moving towards Yi Tiancheng, wanting to engulf him as well. Everyone held their breaths and focused, their eyes filled with shock. It was as though there were only 2 dazzling figures left in the world. The fight between the two caused the weather to change and the world to quake. This was a fight that far surpassed the knowledge of nascent souls. Vast oceans. Yi Tiancheng finally retracted the contempt in his heart and his eyes turned misty as he mouthed 2 words. Splash. A vast ocean appeared behind Yi Tiancheng and he seemed to have fused with it. Yi Tiancheng's figure began to blur. Ah, it's his golden core phenomenon. Because of this golden core phenomenon, he was able to sweep through every one of the golden core realm and dominate as the top of the phenomenon ranking. Cries of surprises came from the crowd. As long as cultivators were willing to comprehend and deduce, many golden core phenomenons could be transformed into their personal dermic arts. Of course, the deduction process was extremely long and boring. There were also many paragons who wasted their time without any gains. The vast ocean surged and engulfed the purple thunderstorm instantly. The seawater churned and surged towards Zimo. It was only now that Zimo's eyes truly flashed with a hint of surprise. Interesting. Zimo muttered softly. All of a sudden, a massive being appeared beneath his feet. It had 4 legs and 2 heads. The being carried a gigantic shell that was filled with mysterious ravines. It was ancient and seemed as though it could contain the secrets of the world. The back of the armor supported the heavens and the earth with its 4 legs, moving against the sea continuously. Groar! The turtle and snake reared their heads and let out a long howl that shone with divine light. Heaven and earth rumbled. The phenomenon of the turtle and snake, the black tortoise, had descended. To think that I would be able to see this phenomenon again 100 years later. Hang Qiuyu lamented. It was as though he had returned to the unforgettable time of the phenomenon clash between the paragons of myriad phenomenon city. Jian Wuzong remarked sourly, "Humph, they're both golden core phenomenons from the top of the phenomenon ranking. There's not much difference." "There's too much difference." Hang Qiuyu shook his head and did not explain further. That was because there would soon be an outcome to this clash of phenomenons 100 years after. Su Zimo stood on the turtle and snake, going against the current. The distance between the two of them narrowed constantly. Yi Tiancheng's expression did not change as his figure turned increasingly illusory. Bright moon! By the time he said that, his figure had already vanished above the vast ocean. Thereafter, a bright moon rose from the horizon, scattering silver rays onto the surface of the sea, sparkling like a painting. Yi Tiancheng had completely fused into his phenomenon. Vast ocean, bright moon. First on the phenomenon ranking. This was also a golden core phenomenon created by Yi Tiancheng that was unprecedented. Vast ocean, bright moon. Su Zimo smiled gently and his figure blurred for a moment before vanishing as well. Flames raged on the massive turtle shell and a green lotus grew out. Under the heat of the flames, the green color gradually faded and shone with a bedazzling golden light. Swoosh! The golden lotus flower suddenly moved. It smashed towards the moon that was rising in the skies. Boom! There was a deafening sound. Cracks appeared on the bright moon. Instantly, the picturesque scene was shattered and Yi Tiancheng's figure fell out, staggering backwards with a pale face and disheveled clothes. Su Zimo's figure appeared as well, his green robes fluttering without a speck of dust. The fight between the two phenomenons had come to an end. The difference between them was clear. Su Zimo strode forward and said indifferently, "Even if you're the real bright moon, I can suppress you all the same." Chapter 957, Eye of Reincarnation. Chapter 957, Eye of Reincarnation. Yi Tiancheng was very strong. As the number 1 of the phenomenon ranking, he created an unprecedented golden core phenomenon and left his name on the ancient phenomenon stele. His hands were stained with the blood of more than one void reversion, an opponent that was a major cultivation realm above him. That was enough to prove his strength. He was only an early-stage nascent soul. Not only him, even the others did not dare to imagine how strong he would be once he cultivated to late or perfected stage nascent soul realm. Yi Tiancheng had never tasted defeat throughout his cultivation journey. Fighting someone above his level was as common as eating and drinking to him. He truly had the strength to do so as well. Unfortunately, he was against the wrong opponent. Among those of the same cultivation realm, there was no one who could match Su Zimo, let alone the fact that Yi Tiancheng was 2 cultivation realms lower. Their dermic powers were not on the same level. The phenomenons collided and Yi Tiancheng was defeated. If not for the fact that he possessed a powerful defensive dermic weapon on him, he would have been severely injured in this clash. Little Granduncle Master actually has the upper hand. Nangong Ling was secretly speechless. One had to know that they had witnessed Yi Tiancheng dominating his peers with their own eyes. To many of them, Yi Tiancheng was an invincible symbol. They truly had not expected that someone of the same cultivation realm would be able to gain the upper hand against Yi Tiancheng. I'm afraid it's not as simple as just gaining the upper hand. Lu Hanyan shook her head. Right from the beginning, has Yi Tiancheng managed a proper counterattack against Granduncle Master at all? Nangong Ling and Ru Xian were stunned. Yi Tiancheng's methods were strong and he had many trump cards. Although he had endless methods and even released his golden core phenomenons, they were all defeated by Su Zimo. This was not an upper hand, but a crushing. On the battlefield, the distance between them closed rapidly. Yi Tiancheng narrowed his eyes and took out a pitch-black mountain from his storage bag unhurriedly, charging towards Zimo. The mountain peak expanded and shone with beams of light. That mountain was a perfect dermic weapon. Zimo's expression was unchanged as his glabella shone and a green lotus platform flew out. Compared to the black mountain peak, the green lotus platform looked incomparably tiny. However, when the two collided, an earth-shaking sound exploded. Boom! Under everyone's watchful eyes, the perfect dermic weapon on the peak was shattered by the green lotus platform. Pest! The crowd was shocked. A perfect-grade perfected Lord Dermic weapon was destroyed just like that. Even a connate perfected Lord Dermic weapon would not be able to achieve such terrifying lethality. It's the creation Green Lotus. Right then, a void reversion of the Buddhist sect exclaimed as he recognized the origin of the Green Lotus platform. Heavens! The creation Green Lotus has already been resurrected and has grown to grade 5. How did this person manage to do it? That's way too scary. With the creation Green Lotus in hand, whose dermic weapon can compete against it? The Buddhist monks were shocked. The mountain peak exploded. Amidst the flying sand and rocks, Yi Tiancheng's figure suddenly flashed and lunged over with a stone hammer in his hands. He seemed to have expected that the mountain peak would not be able to stop Zimo. The stone hammer looked ordinary and rough. However, it gave off an extremely ancient aura as though it came from the primordial era. Shatter! Yi Tiancheng raised his arm and smashed it towards Zimo's head. Zimo's expression changed and the creation Green Lotus tore through the void, colliding against the stone hammer. Boom! It was yet another deafening sound. The stone hammer flew out of his hands. The creation Green Lotus was sent flying as well, turning into a streak of green light and falling into the crowd. Yi Tiancheng shuddered and his eyes shone with disbelief. Although the stone hammer in his hands did not have any dermic patterns, it had a powerful origin and could even smash a connate perfected Lord Dermic weapon. He had not expected that the collision with the creation Green Lotus would cause him to lose his grip and have the stone hammer fly out of his hands. Zimo was surprised as well. A grade 5 creation Green Lotus was already comparable to a connate Dao being dermic weapon. He had not expected that the stone hammer would not shatter. Of course, that did not affect the entire situation. Yi Tiancheng was slightly stunned but Zimo did not hesitate at all. He strode forward and extended his palm, clenching it into a fist and punching towards Yi Tiancheng. Yi Tiancheng snapped out of his stupor and punched back without fear. Bang! There was a dull sound of defeat when the fists clashed. Yi Tiancheng grunted and his expression changed. His physique was definitely not weak and he was only a step away from cultivating tsunami blood as well. Unexpectedly, his fist nearly shattered after exchanging a single punch with Zimo. The pain was unbearable. Ha 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 ha! Zimo reared his head in laughter. Yi Tiancheng, you're still far from Diin. Back in Myriad Phenomenon City, the two of them fought. Because Zimo could not use the blood chi of the demon race, he was disadvantaged in melee combat and was suppressed by Diin. He had no choice but to release his dermic arts to counterattack before he managed to recover. But now, Zimo had suppressed Yi Tiancheng with just his physical strength without even activating his bloodline. Not necessarily. Yi Tiancheng's voice was cold as a vicious glint flashed through his eyes. Immediately after, his eyes shone with a strange fluctuation that seemed as though the entire world was spinning. Time went haywire and space was distorted. Two beams of light shot out from Yi Tiancheng's eyes and collided in midair, forming a gigantic wheel that crushed over slowly, as though it wanted to engulf the entire world. This wheel encompassed everything, as though it could turn the 5 elements inside out, throw yin and yang into chaos and turn the universe upside down, causing all living beings to fall into reincarnation. The Eye of Reincarnation. It was one of the ancient visual techniques. The two of them were extremely close and there was no way the visual technique could be dodged. The cultivators were moved. Nobody expected that at this point of the battle, when Yi Tiancheng was about to suffer a crushing defeat, he would counterattack and release the Eye of Reincarnation. Visual techniques were the hardest to cultivate. Up till this point of his cultivation, Zimo had only encountered 2 or 3 paragons with visual techniques. To think that Chaos Essence sect would possess two of them. It was normal for cultivators with visual techniques to be invincible among their peers. Visual techniques could be released instantly and unexpectedly. These attacks were almost always fatal. Even if his opponent could react, he might not be able to defend against it. Even if he could defend against it, he would have to exhaust his mental strength. At this moment, the cultivator could take advantage of the situation and kill his opponent. Lang Ro and the others were shocked. They knew that Zimo knew of an extremely terrifying visual technique as well. Back when Zimo was fighting against the God Race experts, he had already released this sort of visual technique and gained the upper hand. However, that was the Illumination Dragon Eye. Once released, it would expose the fact that he was a demon. If Dao Lord Lan Yu interfered, Zimo might even die here, let alone be able to kill Yi Tiancheng. In the blink of an eye, a dense cluster of flying swords appeared in Zimo's right eye. They were tiny and exquisite, resembling needles. The needles were none other than the 36 flying swords conjured by the Illumination Stone. In the blink of an eye, the 36 flying swords had already formed the Illumination Sword formation and shot out from Zimo's right eye. Chapter 958. Undefeatable. Chapter 958. Undefeatable. Because there were Dharma characteristics present at the Thousand Crane Tea Party, Zimo had not used any techniques of the demon race as well as his second essence spirit the entire time. Otherwise, Yi Tiancheng might not be able to last more than 10 moves if Zimo released his full cultivation. It was the same now. In a battle of visual techniques, Zimo chose not to use the Illumination Dragon Eye. Instead, he released the Illumination Sword formation. The flying swords that were made from the Illumination Stone complemented the sword formation perfectly, unleashing its might to its limits. Clang! Clang! The sword formation formed by the 36 flying swords vibrated and buzzed, forming a bedazzling sword beam that slashed towards the incoming wheel. Boom! A deafening bang sounded when the two powers collided. Instantly, the sword formation dispersed and the 36 flying swords turned into sword lights that returned to Zimo's right eye. Little Granduncle Master lost. Ru Xian and the others felt their hearts clench and had worried expressions on their faces. Many cultivators were watching the battlefield intently as well. The wheel of Yi Tiancheng's visual technique hovered in midair, silent and motionless. All of a sudden, cracks appeared on the gigantic wheel of the visual technique, and it shone with an endless light. It was sharp and almost engulfed Yi Tiancheng. Ah! Yi Tiancheng let out a tragic cry. His eyes were filled with unbearable pain and 2 streams of blood flowed out, looking extremely gruesome. His clothes were shredded by the sword chi as well, revealing a dark golden inner armor that shone with 5 lights. It was a perfect-grade defensive dermic weapon. If not for that defensive dermic weapon, Yi Tiancheng's body would have been torn apart. What are you 9 beasts waiting for? Kill him. Yi Tiancheng had a mournful expression as he pointed in Zimo's direction with bloodshot eyes. Roar! The 9 WYRMs that were initially on the ground let out a furious roar as demonic chi surged. Their bodies expanded as they broke free from the chains and soared into the air, revealing their sharp claws as they charged toward Zimo. A stir broke out amongst the crowd. Yi Tiancheng's crushing defeat was already beyond most people's expectations. Unexpectedly, he was indignant after his defeat and ordered his 9 WYRMs to surround his opponent. Yi Tiancheng was the number 1 of the phenomenon ranking and was known as the number 1 perfected lord. He could not lose. In order to kill Zimo, he had already resorted to unscrupulous means. He no longer cared about his reputation. What are you guys doing? Furious, Ru Xian stood out right away and hollered. Dao Bing Yu Ding had a stern expression as he turned to look at Dao Lord Lan Yu and said in a deep voice, Senior Lan Yu, aren't you going to stop it? Are you going to allow Yi Tiancheng to bully with numbers? Pretty sister sect master. Little Fatty protested hurriedly. What's up with Yi Tiancheng having 9 WRMs to help him? It's time to put your demon revealing mirror to use. Hurry and use it to reflect them. You're wrong. Chaos Essence Sect's Void Reversion Dao being sneered. This isn't the Paragon battle. This is a personal feud and there's no such thing as bullying in numbers. Dao being Chi Guy of Zephyr Thunder Palace said, although the 9 WYRMS are demons, they are the mounts of Yi Tiancheng and are a part of his strength. It's reasonable for them to help him fight. What you guys said makes sense. Let's continue watching. Dao Lord Lon Yu said indifferently. Lang Ro, Little Fatty and everyone else from 100 Refinement sect were enraged. Everyone could tell that Dao Lord Lon Yu was biased. Master Yu. Lang Ro hesitated and looked at Dao Lord Lon Yu with disappointment. Dao Lord Lon Yu ignored her. This was a cultivator without any backing. Furthermore, he had offended several supersections. The other cultivator had a supersect backing him and an even more terrifying monster incarnate senior brother with limitless potential. It was clear which side to support. This is bad. Snowdrift Valley's Paragon, Ling Bai, shook his head. The 9 WYRMS combined are equivalent to 9 Paragons. Furthermore, one of them is a mid-level fiend demon. You underestimate him. Fairy Luo Xue smiled indifferently. The show has just begun. On the battlefield. Standing in midair, Su Zimo's green robes fluttered as he looked at the 9 incoming WRs with a mocking gaze. In Thousand Demon Valley, there were countless mid-level fiend demons that died in his hands. Su Zimo conjured hand seals and opened his mouth once more. Ma! Daming mantra was released. At the same time, Su Zimo conjured a dermic seal with the daming mantra. Boom! A gigantic golden palm descended from the skies, blotting out the skies and emitting an endless might. It shone brightly as though it could subdue all demons. Demon Subduing Seal. The first 3 dermic seals of the Daming Dermic Seal were the Fiend Suppression Seal, Demon Subduing Seal and Immortal Trap Seal. Every single seal was targeted. For example, the Fiend Suppression Seal was the most effective against fiend cultivators. The Demon Subduing Seal had the greatest effect on demons. Su Zimo cultivated a top cultivation technique of the Buddhist monasteries, and his essence spirit was condensed with immense dermic powers. Coupled with the Mingwang prayer beads and daming mantra, even Yi Tiancheng might not be able to defend against this top-tier Buddhist dermic art, let alone the 9 WYRMS. The moment the 9 WYRMS charged forward, they were suppressed by the gigantic palm. Only a mid-level fiend demon WYRM broke free from the power of the Demon Subduing Seal and charged forward with widened eyes. In a flash, Su Zimo turned into a purple streak of lightning and arrived beside the WYRM in an instant. The burst of the lightning escape technique was shockingly fast. The WYRM's body was massive and although it was ferocious, it was relatively clumsy and it was too late to turn around. Come on down. Grabbing the WYRM's tail, Su Zimo hollered and swung his arm, smashing it against the ground. Boom! The ground quaked violently. More than half of the WYRM's body was smashed into the ground and it was covered in wounds. Its tendons and bones were broken and its head was bleeding. It no longer had its previous arrogance. Pest! This power. 800 years ago, there was a rumor that he was invincible in melee combat. The legend is true. All the cultivators widened their eyes in shock. How was this a cultivator? Even the top pure-blooded ferocious beasts were suppressed by his body. This person was even fiercer than ferocious beasts. Perfected Lord Panglan's eyes revealed a deep fear as well. He realized that he could not get close to Su Zimo. Although Heavenly Dipper sect specialized in body tempering and his physique was not weak, it was no different from paper in Su Zimo's hands. Even so, Perfected Lord Panglan had no intention of retreating. He sneered coldly with a cold glint in his eyes. No matter what, Yi Tiancheng was at early-stage nascent soul. He had expended a lot of dermic powers in the fight earlier on and his essence spirit was weak. Using this opportunity, he hurriedly consumed a large number of elixirs. Yi Tiancheng had just caught his breath and was about to charge forward when he realized that his 9 WYRMS had already been crushed by Su Zimo. You! Yi Tiancheng's heart skipped a beat as fear filled his eyes for the first time. Up till this point of his cultivation, he had encountered countless strong foes and had yet to be defeated. Although he had been through multiple life and death situations and was on the brink of death, he had never felt fear in his heart. But right now, Yi Tiancheng was afraid. The cultivator with delicate features looked like a man-eating ferocious beast. That seemingly frail body seemed to contain a terrifying power that could shake the world and suppress all living beings. This man is undefeatable. That was the only thought that remained in Yi Tiancheng's mind. Chapter 959, Die. Chapter 959, Die. Looking at Su Zimo's indifferent gaze, Yi Tiancheng felt fear and took half a step back instinctively. With that half a step back, Yi Tiancheng's aura dissipated instantly. You're finished. In a flash, Su Zimo arrived beside Yi Tiancheng the moment he said his last word. Without any unnecessary movements, he punched out and the bloodline in his body surged with a torrential sound. Tsunami blood. Su Zimo released the power of his bloodline with that punch. Yi Tiancheng's expression changed. Under the envelopment of the power of that punch, he felt as though he was about to be drowned without a corpse left. At this critical moment of life and death, Yi Tiancheng roared and released his bloodline at the same time. Dermic powers surged within his body as he countered with a punch. Bang! The two fists collided. Crack, crack, crack. The sound of bones cracking could be heard from Yi Tiancheng's fist. Under countless gazes, his fist was deformed and his flesh was mangled. His broken bones were exposed in a frightening manner. His entire arm could not withstand the power of that punch and his perfect-grade inner armor shattered as his flesh exploded into a mist of blood. Su Zimo's bloodline was way too terrifying. Now that he had activated his bloodline, the might of his punch was frightening. Ah! Yi Tiancheng let out a tragic cry as his features contorted in pain. The veins on his neck popped and he staggered backwards. A single punch. A single punch was all it took to injure Yi Tiancheng severely. Even if he survived, his arm would be completely crippled. I'll take your life within 3 moves. Su Zimo hollered and extended his palm, slapping down on the top of Yi Tiancheng's head. Even if he was in his peak condition, Yi Tiancheng could not escape from Su Zimo's pursuit. Now that he was severely injured and his movement speed was reduced, there was naturally no way he could dodge. He could only raise his other arm to defend. Bang! Although the palm strike seemed light, it snapped Yi Tiancheng's arm. The power of that palm was not expended and continued pressing down, landing on Yi Tiancheng's chest. Piak! Through the thick inner armor, Yi Tiancheng's chest suddenly caved in. Yi Tiancheng's face turned blood red as he opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes dimmed and he used his last bit of strength to let out a tragic cry. Save me! A beam of light flew out from the top of Yi Tiancheng's head towards Chaos Essence Sect's camp. It was his essence spirit. Yi Tiancheng was extremely decisive and knew that he would definitely die if he did not abandon his body at this distance. Given his condition, there was no way he could escape from Su Zimo's pursuit with his battered body. He could only escape this calamity by using the speed of his essence spirit. The crowd was shocked when they saw that. On the one hand, it was because the outcome of the battle had been decided and Yi Tiancheng was already forced into such an embarrassing situation. On the other hand, in this battle, dermic powers surged and energy shot in all directions. It was equivalent to committing suicide for a nascent soul's essence spirit to leave their body. However, right after, to everyone's surprise, Yi Tiancheng's essence spirit traveled through the chaotic battlefield at an extremely fast speed and was completely safe. His essence spirit was shrouded by a layer of gray fog, as though it could withstand the astral wind. Chaos Essence Sect had a top-notch spirit refinement technique that could allow one's essence spirit to cultivate Chaos Essence Chi at the nascent soul realm. Although he was only at early-stage nascent soul realm, Yi Tiancheng's essence spirit could behave like the essence spirit of a void reversion. It could leave the body and roam the universe. At the same time, he sought help from Chaos Essence Sect, hoping that the sect's void reversions would be able to stop Su Zimo and resolve this crisis. Yi Tiancheng's plan was not bad. Unfortunately, he had underestimated Su Zimo. Oh, his essence spirit can leave his body? Zimo raised his brow slightly and said indifferently, however, "It's useless." It was already not easy for an early-stage nascent soul to be able to eject their essence spirits. Back then, Zimo had only managed to reach this stage thanks to the creation Green Lotus. If Yi Tiancheng were to cultivate to late-stage nascent soul realm and was on par with Zimo, it would take a lot of effort to kill him. However, there was no doubt that Zimo would be able to crush him in today's battle. Chaos Essence Sect's Void Reversion leaped into the air hurriedly and conjured hand seals, preparing to release dermic arts to save Yi Tiancheng. However, a streak of lightning flashed past his eyes. Swash! It was too fast. Before he could react, another person appeared before him. Zimo. A pair of wings formed from dermic powers behind him dissipated slowly. With the burst of ethereal wings and lightning escape, Zimo arrived first and grabbed Yi Tiancheng's essence spirit in his palm. The entire process happened in the blink of an eye. The void reversion of Chaos Essence Sect had yet to form his dermic art. You! The void reversion of Chaos Essence Sect was shocked and retreated 2 steps. Even he was afraid of being closed in by Zimo. The other Chaos Essence Sect cultivators were even more flustered and retreated. You can't kill me. Yi Tiancheng's voice sounded from Zimo's palm. He was fierce on the outside but cowardly on the inside. Everyone looked over. In Zimo's palm, there was a gigantic ball of dermic power. Yi Tiancheng's essence spirit was trapped within and could not move at all, looking extremely terrified. Zimo, release him. The void reversion of Chaos Essence Sect reacted and shouted. Yi Tiancheng's essence spirit was in Zimo's palm and could be crushed with a single thought. He was cautious and did not dare to act rashly. Taking a deep breath of air, Dao Lord Lanyu stood up slowly and said in a deep voice, Zimo, since the outcome has been decided, let him go. Fu! A mocking look flashed through Zimo's eyes. Turning around, he looked at the high and mighty Dao Lord Lanyu and asked instead, if I were in Yi Tiancheng's position, would you plead for me, Sect Master Lanyu? Dao Lord Lanyu's expression darkened. It was clearly stated that the fight between Zimo and Yi Tiancheng was a personal feud and had nothing to do with Thousand Crane Sect. However, if Yi Tiancheng could be saved, Chaos Essence Sect would owe the savior a favor. In Dao Lord Lanyu's heart, if it was as Zimo said, she would definitely not plead for mercy on behalf of Zimo and offend super sects like Chaos Essence Sect if the latter was in the same position. Suppressing the rage in her heart, Dao Lord Lanyu said sternly, Junior, I've been through this before. Let me give you a piece of advice. You're too sharp and fearless. You'll definitely get yourself killed in the future. Killed? Zimo smiled indifferently. I've been burdened with a lot of troubles to begin with. I don't mind adding one more to the list. Zimo, there's no deep hatred between us. It's merely the title of the #1 perfected lord. I'll let you have it. Why, you don't have to kill me. Yi Tiancheng was scared out of his wits as he begged for mercy with a trembling voice filled with endless fear. The cultivators sighed. The #1 of the phenomenon ranking and the #1 perfected lord of Middle Continent had fallen to such a state. It was truly a pity. Not many people could remain calm in the face of death. Yi Tiancheng, I wouldn't even be bothered to fight if it's just for the title of the #1 perfected lord. Zimo's gaze shifted as he glared at the essence spirit in his palm and said coldly, however, of all things, you shouldn't have harbored designs on Lang Ro. Yi Tiancheng's heart turned cold when he heard that. Zimo had already raised his head and looked at everyone from Chaos Essence Sect, saying coldly, since Dean wants to lure me out, I'll give him a huge gift today. Die! Zimo clenched his fist. Yi Tiancheng's essence spirit was crushed and destroyed on the spot. Chapter 960, Spirit Consciousness Attack. Chapter 960. Spirit Consciousness Attack. Instantly, the mystic courtyard fell into silence. When they saw that, everyone opened their mouths slightly with conflicted expressions and could not calm down for a long time. Dead. Yi Tiancheng, a #1 of the phenomenon ranking who was lauded as the #1 perfected lord of the Middle Continent, one of the 2 paragons of Chaos Essence Sect, was killed right in front of everybody just like that. Apart from shock, everyone felt emotional. This was the cultivation world. So what if he was a paragon? So what if he was a monster incarnate? There was still a danger of being killed if he did not stand at the peak of Tianhuang mainland. A paragon that died prematurely would eventually be forgotten. It wouldn't take too long, probably 100 years, before most people forget who Yi Tiancheng was. He was too young. He rose like a comet and had only been famous for a few decades. To think that he would meet an even more terrifying monster incarnate and end up in such a state. Everyone knew that Yi Tiancheng deserved to die. The reason why he came to propose marriage was to force little fatty, Ji Chengtian, Shi Jian and the other old friends of Su Zimo to appear so that he could kill them one by one. However, Yi Tiancheng did not expect that instead of luring a snake out of its cave, he lured a dragon instead. Jian Wuzong looked at the center of the battlefield at the cultivator in his seemingly plain green robes with a hint of fear in his eyes. It was only at that moment that he truly understood why Hang Qiuyu did not dare to attack that person. He recalled the 2 times he attacked that person and felt a sense of trepidation. Nobody would object to the description that this man was decisive to kill and was sharp and fearless. Even a monster incarnate like Yi Tiancheng who had such a background, status and fame was killed just like that. There was no hesitation at all. However, Jian Wuzong refused to believe that this person was bloodthirsty. That was because he was still alive. He had attacked that person twice but was still alive. Dao Lord Lan Yu had an ugly expression. She had not expected that Su Zimo would kill Yi Tiancheng right here without giving her any face. The return of this man is going to cause a bloodbath in the cultivation world again. Is he declaring war on Di'in? Di'in is now at Void Reversion Realm. Although his combat strength is strong, he's a major cultivation realm weaker than Di'in. Isn't that a little arrogant? Gradually, discussions broke out in the crowd. No matter what, there should be no doubt about the title of the #1 perfected lord. That's right. He's probably the only one qualified to drink the last cup of supreme-grade mystic tea. Shoo! A cold beam tore through the air and pierced towards the back of Su Zimo's head, arriving instantly. Just as everyone was discussing, someone suddenly attacked without any warning. When the cold light was about to pierce Su Zimo's head, a voice sounded. You'll have to get through me if you want to drink supreme-grade mystic tea. He attacked first before speaking. This was a complete ambush. Furthermore, that person's dermic powers were terrifying and 6 dermic patterns shone on his flying sword. It was a connate perfected lord dermic weapon with shocking lethality. He did not hold back on this attack at all. Shing! Right in front of everyone, the flying sword pierced through Su Zimo's head. However, no blood splattered. Everyone focused their gazes. Su Zimo, who was penetrated by the flying sword, was gradually dissipating into nothingness. However, the real Su Zimo had already dodged to the side. Because his speed was too fast, the figure left in his original position was just an afterimage. If it was anyone else, they might not have been able to dodge that sword. However, Su Zimo possessed the unfathomable spirit perception. The moment the flying sword was released, he had already dodged it. The flying sword spun in midair and turned into a streak of light, returning to a cultivator of Heavenly Dipper sect. It was perfected Lord Panglon who had attacked. You have a death wish. Su Zimo looked at perfected Lord Panglon coldly. Fu. Perfected Lord Panglon smiled gently. Yi Tiancheng is just a young lad who's still wet behind the ears. I don't take him seriously at all. Do you think that you're the #1 perfected lord after killing Yi Tiancheng? Su Zimo no longer wanted to listen to perfected Lord Panglan's nonsense and walked towards the ladder. A shuddering malevolent aura surged over. Perfected Lord Panglan felt that he was not facing a cultivator but an ancient demon whose hands were stained with endless blood. His heart skipped a beat. No matter what, the melee combat strength that Su Zimo displayed earlier on still terrified him. He must not be closed in. You're the one with a death wish. Perfected Lord Panglan roared and his glabella shone with an incomparably tyrannical power as his spirit consciousness surged forth. A spirit consciousness attack. This was an ability that cultivators possessed after cultivating to the void reversion realm. By advancing and condensing their essence spirits further, their essence spirits could leave their bodies and roam the world, This was an ability that was only available after they were at that level. Normally, void reversions could crush nascent souls. Apart from the increase in strength of their dermic powers, spiritual consciousness attacks were also the most direct method for void reversions to suppress nascent souls. Not every void reversion knew essence spirit secret skills. However, every void reversion could use spirit consciousness attacks. The crowd was shocked when they sensed the energy fluctuation. Perfected Lord Panglan is already able to release a spirit consciousness attack at perfected nascent soul realm. No wonder he did not take Yi Tiancheng seriously. This is his greatest trump card. No matter how terrifying Su Zimo's physique is and how strong he is in melee combat, he won't be able to defend against spirit consciousness attacks. As expected of the top of the phenomenon ranking 400 years ago, he saw through Su Zimo's weakness with a single glance. Su Zimo is doomed. Perfected Lord Panglan became excited when he heard the discussions around him. Yi Tiancheng and Su Zimo would be his stepping stones from this day forth. This is your trump card. Right then, Su Zimo's voice sounded calmly. Perfected Lord Panglan suddenly felt uneasy. There was no panic or fear in Su Zimo's eyes. There was only calmness and a hint of mockery. A spirit consciousness attack. Su Zimo smirked and said slowly, "I can do it too." The moment he said that, raging tides surged within his consciousness. The black-haired essence spirit stood in the air and his black hair danced, crackling with lightning. Sanskrit echoed in his consciousness, vast and sacred, lasting for a long time. The top two cultivation techniques of Purple Thunder Manual and Great Day Rulai Sutra were already pushed to their limits. An even more terrifying spirit consciousness burst forth from Su Zimo's glabella to meet Perfected Lord Panglan's spirit consciousness attack head-on. Boom! The two spirit consciousnesses collided with a deafening bang. Ripples of air currents appeared in the void and surged in all directions, toppling the cultivators at the front. Perfected Lord Panglan's eyes were filled with endless shock and he was dumbfounded. He had not expected that Su Zimo would be able to release a spirit consciousness attack as well. Furthermore, it was even more ferocious and terrifying than his spirit consciousness attack. Before long, Perfected Lord Panglan's spirit consciousness was shattered and dispersed. The remnant spirit consciousness surged into Perfected Lord Panglan's consciousness. Chapter 961. I think you're tired of living. Chapter 961. I think you're tired of living. Ah! Perfected Lord Panglan shuddered and cried out in pain. He hugged his head with both hands and curled his body as though he was enduring immense pain. The crowd was astonished. If everybody was shocked when Perfected Lord Panglan released the spirit consciousness attack, Su Zimo's counterattack was absolutely mind-blowing. Perfected Lord Panglan had cultivated for hundreds of years and was half a step into the void reversion realm. It was only logical for his cultivation to be at this level. However, Su Zimo was only slightly older than 100 years old and was at late-stage nascent soul realm. How could his essence spirit be so terrifying? In fact, his essence spirit was so condensed that it was able to release spirit consciousness attacks. What was even more frightening was that Perfected Lord Panglan was clearly defeated in that clash of spirit consciousnesses. In reality, the moment Su Zimo entered nascent soul realm, he was already able to release spirit consciousness attacks by fusing his two essence spirits together. By the time he cultivated to late-stage nascent soul, his two essence spirits were pure and condensed enough on their own without fusion. The black-haired essence spirit cultivated two top-tier immortal and Buddhist cultivation techniques. Not only that, there was also the nourishment of the creation green lotus. To Su Zimo, it was only normal that his spirit consciousness attack could suppress Perfected Lord Panglan's spirit consciousness. Perfected Lord Panglan had a splitting headache as wounds appeared on his essence spirit. Essence spirit injuries were the hardest to heal from. Suddenly, he felt a strong sense of regret. He struggled to stand up. Unfortunately, Su Zimo would not give him another chance. After the spirit consciousness attack, Su Zimo's figure flashed and arrived before Perfected Lord Panglan in the blink of an eye. He extended his finger and tapped on the latter's glabella gently.
Poof!
A bloody hole appeared on perfected Lord Panglan's glabella. His essence spirit was completely destroyed. Another monster incarnate had died. The number one of the phenomenon ranking 400 years ago, an existence that was half a step into the void reversion realm, died right in front of countless cultivators. He died even faster than Yi Tiancheng. That was the danger of a clash of spirit consciousnesses. Even if one's essence spirit was not destroyed at the first moment, it was easy for them to be shaken. They would not be able to recover in time, and their opponents might seize the momentum to kill them. Therefore, most of the time, cultivators would fight and kill one another. It was rare for them to use spirit consciousness attacks or essence spirit secret skills right away. This was equivalent to a life and death battle that happened in an instant. Nobody was confident of winning. Furthermore, even if they won, if their essence spirits were injured in the process, it would lead to endless trouble. It was not worth it at all. Yi Tiancheng and perfected Lord Panglan, two paragons and two former number one of the phenomenon ranking, fell one after another. Suddenly, a strange killing intent filled the mystic courtyard. The void reversions of Chaos Essence Sect, Heavenly Dipper Sect, Zephyr Thunder Palace, Sword Sect and Hellfire Hall exchanged glances. Although the 5 void reversions were expressionless, their spirit consciousnesses were communicating secretly. Waving his hand, Zimo put away the mystic magnet mountain and the 49 perfected Lord flying swords that were suppressed beneath. Unfortunately, he did not manage to obtain perfected Lord Panglan and Yi Tiancheng storage bags. The mysterious stone hammer of Yi Tiancheng was also put away by Chaos Essence Sect cultivators long ago. However, perfected Lord Panglan's connate perfected Lord flying sword did land in Zimo's hands. Without hesitation, Zimo gave the flying sword to Ji Chengtian. He had the creation green lotus and dermic weapons like the flying sword would not increase his combat strength by much. He might as well give it to his best friend. This scene made many nascent souls envious once again. In that short period of time, Zimo had given out 2 connate perfected Lord dermic weapons and a supreme grade mystic tea. Any one of them would cause one's eyes to turn red and many cultivators would fight over it. Ji Qingtian knew that the reason why he was hunted down by Dian several dozen years ago and survived barely was because of his relationship with Zimo. This was something that Zimo felt guilty about. Now that Zimo was back, he wanted to make up for the guilt he felt using this connate dermic weapon. Ji Chengtian pondered for a moment and did not decline. Zimo's gaze shifted to a monk of formless monastery and said indifferently, "Hand it over." It was a void reversion monk with the Dao title Xianming. The crowd was stunned. Everyone could not understand why Zimo would suddenly turn towards the Buddhist sections. Right from the beginning, the Buddhist monks did nothing. Could it be that Zimo was already arrogant to the point where he looked down on everyone? Monk Xianming lowered his gaze and asked without looking at Zimo, "Patron Su, what are you talking about? Even within the Buddhist sects, there are monks as sleazy as you." Zimo sneered coldly with a mocking gaze. "Patron, watch your words. Who are you talking about? How has our formless monastery offended you?" Many monks of formless monastery glared at him. Zimo's expression turned cold as he glared at Monk Xianming and asked again, "Monk, does that mean that you want to play dumb with me? Please explain, Patron Su." Monk Xianming was still expressionless and calm. Well. Zimo nodded. "Since you want to pretend, I'll let you suffer. Break it." Zimo's eyes lit up and he hollered, "Xing." The group of cultivators were still confused and only heard the sound of clothes tearing. However, they saw green rays of light burst forth from Monk Xianming's robes. A green lotus platform appeared and broke out of Monk Xianming's storage bag. The creation green lotus. Everyone opened their mouths slightly as realization dawned on them. During the battle between Zimo and Yi Tiancheng earlier on, the creation green lotus collided against the mysterious stone hammer. The creation green lotus fell into the crowd, but before Zimo could retrieve it, Monk Xianming of Formless Monastery had hidden it. Poof! The creation green lotus spun slowly and caused wounds to appear on Monk Xianming's waist as blood flowed. In the blink of an eye, his robes were stained. Monk Xianming grunted and took half a step back. How could his body withstand the power of the creation green lotus? The creation Green Lotus wanted to tear through the air, but monk Xianming hurriedly took out a wooden fish to suppress it. He channeled his dermic powers and injected them into the wooden fish. The wooden fish shone brightly and pinned the creation Green Lotus in midair, rendering it immobile. Monk, do you think that I wouldn't be able to sense it because you placed a seal on your storage bag? Zimo sneered. The creation Green Lotus is my destiny dermic weapon and has been nurtured for 100 years. How can a monk with evil intentions like you lay a finger on it? When monk Xianming saw that he could no longer continue with his disguise, he decided to throw caution to the wind and said in a deep voice, Junior, don't slander me. The creation Green Lotus is a sacred item of the Buddhist monasteries to begin with. Since it has reappeared, it should be returned to its owner, to our Buddhist sects. He was being unreasonable. Dao Being Yuding frowned and was about to step in to negotiate when Zimo's expression darkened completely. He recalled Demonist Ji's words about the difference between immortals and fiends. Those of the fiend sex would fight for anything openly. As for the cultivators of the immortal sex, they would fight for it as well. However, they would do it in secret by casting accusations upon those from the fiend sections. Right now, not only did this Buddhist monk Xianming want to snatch his creation Green Lotus, he was even acting completely righteous about it. How dare you try to snatch something of mine? Zimo's gaze was cold as he said slowly, I think you're tired of living. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.